Chapter 491. In the east wing of the Zhao family, the first rays of the morning sun had just shone down when someone knocked on the door, startling the birds on the pear tree not far away. Without waiting for a response from the room, the door was pushed open with a creak, and a pretty little girl walked in with a smile on her face. "Don't knock next time, it's too troublesome." Ning Chen turned around and looked at the girl. "That won't do, you have to be polite." Zhao Liusu walked forward in a good mood. Ning Chen smiled and didn't want to bother with her anymore. This girl couldn't understand good and bad words. She was too stupid. Today, people from Tianji City and the royal family will come to Swallow Cloud Mountain to pray for the dynasty. Uncle Sect Master and some elders of the Zhao family will also be there. "Do you want to go and watch the fun?" Zhao Liusu asked with a smile. "People from Tianji City?" Surprise flashed through Ning Chen's eyes, but he shook his head without hesitation and refused. "Not going." "Why?" Zhao Liusu pouted and said unhappily. "Are you stupid? What if people from Tianji City see through my identity?" Ning Chen said unhappily. Zhao Liusu thought about it and felt that it was true. "Then I'll go by myself. I'll find you when I come back." Zhao Liusu decisively gave up on a certain someone and left with a smile. Seeing this, Ning Chen despised her in his heart. She was too disloyal. Outside Swallow Cloud Mountain, Qingxi Lake was surrounded by mist. On Qingxi Bridge, scholars and beauties came and went. It was a beautiful scene. In an ancient temple outside the mountain, Bodhi built a pagoda. On the glazed stone, there was a faint trace of red. The Buddhas used their blood to build the pagoda. For several days and nights, they poured spirituality into the pagoda. "Master, what are you building?" A little monk beside him asked, puzzled. "Demon subduing pagoda," the white-robed, white-haired Buddha said softly. "What's the use of it?" the little monk continued to ask. "Suppressing demons in the human world." The white-robed Buddha replied as he built the pagoda. "Do demons really exist in the world?" The little monk with a low cultivation base didn't know much and asked curiously. "If there are Buddhas in the world, then there are demons. Becoming a Buddha or a demon is just a choice made by the human heart. As for demons, all living things have spirits. It's not strange for them to cultivate a demon body," the white-robed Buddha replied. "Are both demons and devils evil?" the little monk asked in confusion. "Sometimes, good and evil are not absolute. Do you think the devil who has saved the world is good or evil?" Subhuti asked softly. "Good," the little monk said affirmatively. "What if the devil loses his original heart and starts killing?" Subhuti asked again. "Evil." The small monk hesitated for a moment before replying. Supreme Bodhi did not say anything after hearing this. The boundary between good and evil was often not so clear. The human world needed to be grateful to those experts from the divine prefecture of the eastern region. Unfortunately, after the divine tribulation, the heroes of the past had lost themselves and began to wreak havoc in the human world that they had once protected. At the same time, on Swallow Cloud Mountain's Wishing Peak, a group of figures walked over. The leader was a purple-robed old man. His steps were slow, and his aged face was filled with fatigue. Beside the old man were two princes of the Xuanji Empire. Behind them, the imperial family's experts and the Zhao family's experts followed closely behind. They were on high alert. The powerful formation was not inferior to the emperor's. In the Xuanji Empire, the divine predictors of each generation had a supreme status. Even the emperor of the Xuanji Empire had to treat them like students and be extremely respectful. At the back of the group, Zhao Liusu looked left and right. At first, she was very excited, but as time passed, she gradually lost interest. Boredom was written all over her face. She regretted coming along. On the east side of Swallow Cloud Mountain, beside Qingxi Lake, Hongyi stood quietly. She looked at the wishing peak in the distance and did not move for a long time. The boat swayed in the lake, and the boatman's singing could be heard. The most beautiful scenery in the northern part of Zhongzhou would attract many young people to come and enjoy it every year. "Sir, it's going to rain soon. Do you want an umbrella?" A 12 or 13-year-old girl walked over. She looked at the young man in front of her with her big bright eyes. Ning Chen came back to his senses and looked at the little girl in front of him. He smiled and said, "Okay, how many do you have?" "2," the little girl replied. Ning Chen took out a small piece of silver and placed it in the little girl's hand. He smiled and said, "I'll take all of them." The little girl looked troubled and said, "I don't have change for them." "No need to change. Quickly go home," Ning Chen said with a gentle expression. "Thank you, sir." The little girl thanked him and handed the last 2 umbrellas to the person in front of her. However, just as Ning Chen took the umbrellas, there was a loud rumble in the sky. Thunder roared and dark clouds covered the last ray of sunlight. In the gloomy sky, drops of rain fell. In the blink of an eye, the entire Qingxi Lake was covered in a haze. "Wait!" Under the rain, the little girl turned to run home. Seeing this, Ning Chen reached out and stopped her. He opened an umbrella and handed it to her. He said softly, "The rain is too heavy. If you get wet, you'll get sick. Take this umbrella." The little girl hurriedly shook her head and said, "This umbrella was bought by Big Brother. I can't take it. I still have one. Think about it. If you get sick, you'll have to take very, very bitter medicine. Moreover, you won't be able to sell umbrellas anymore," Ning Chen said softly as he squatted down and wiped the rain off the little girl's face. "Thank you, Big Brother." The little girl thought for a moment and took the umbrella in the end. She smiled sweetly at him and thanked him again. "Okay, quickly go home. Be careful. The road is slippery in the rain. Don't fall." Ning Chen rubbed the little girl's hair and smiled. The little girl nodded her head vigorously. Then, with the umbrella in her hand, she jogged home. Looking at the little girl's small figure in the distance, the gentleness in Ning Chen's eyes gradually disappeared. He sighed softly, opened the umbrella, and walked towards the other side of the lake. Children from poor families matured early. However, this pure heart was the most precious thing in the world. On the Qingxi Bridge, pedestrians hurried along. Ning Chen walked on the bridge and looked at the scenery under the curtain of rain. His footsteps gradually slowed down. The lake in the rain was like the most beautiful scenery in the world. It was difficult to see clearly, but it gave off a hazy and otherworldly feeling. "Sir, can we share an umbrella?" At this moment, an ethereal voice rang out. A beautiful figure in a blue and white dress appeared under the umbrella. She raised her head and looked at the man in front of her. Her eyes were like stars, so beautiful that it was difficult for people to look away. Ning Chen was momentarily dazed, but then a strange light flashed through his eyes. He asked in confusion, "Miss, have we met before? Does sir say this to every girl you meet for the first time?" The girl asked softly. "My apologies. I was rude. I just felt that you looked familiar, but I couldn't remember where I'd seen you before. May I ask where you're going? If it's on the way, I can send you off." Ning Chen suppressed his doubts and asked. "Northern Imperial City," the girl replied. Ning Chen nodded and said no more. He held the umbrella and walked in the direction of the ancient city. The man and woman in the rain did not say anything. They walked step by step in the rain. There was nothing out of place, as if this was how it should be. When the two of them were about to leave Qingxi Lake, Ning Chen looked back at Wishing Peak in the distance. A moment later, he looked away and walked away with the girl. On Wishing Peak, rain continued to fall from the sky. In front of everyone, a purple-robed elder stood quietly in the rain, praying for the dynasty and for the world. The divine tribulation had just passed, and the demonic calamity had arrived. Tianjizi could not bear to see the world suffer again, so he prayed to the heavens to protect the world. Rumble, thunder fell from the sky, illuminating the world. The people under the thunder were all soaked by the rain, and they looked very wretched. However, even so, no one dared to go up and disturb them. They could only wait patiently. At the back of the group, Zhao Liusu pouted. This trip was not worth it at all. Boom! Another thunderous roar shook the heavens and the earth. The moment the lightning blocked everyone's vision, on Praying Peak, illusions swept out from behind the cliffs. Saber light flashed and slashed at Tianjizi, who was at the front of the team. In a short moment, the imperial family's consecrators and Zhao family's experts came back to their senses. Their expressions changed drastically, and their figures flashed, quickly moving forward to stop them. What a heavy burden! Behind Tianjizi, the two princes' eyes turned cold. Their palms blocked the sword light, and with a clang, they blocked the killing light. At the same time, Zhao Tinkong and the four imperial families' consecrators arrived and joined forces to block wave after wave of attacks. It's you guys again. Zhao Tinkong looked at the black-clothed half-venerables in front of him with a gloomy expression. Just as he was about to attack again, his expression suddenly changed. Oh no, they were luring the tiger away from the mountain. At the back of the group, three half-venerables appeared at the same time and destroyed all obstacles. They immediately took Zhao Liusu, who had not yet recovered from the shock, and quickly left. Zhao Tinkong rushed over and condensed his yuan with a flip of his palm. Vigorous palm energy roared out and rushed towards the three. However, it was already too late. Two half-venerables joined forces to block the former's attack, while the other half-venerables took Zhao Liusu and headed north. Boom! Lightning flashed, reflecting the Zhao family's master's furious expression. He had calculated everything, but still lost. He did not expect that he would make a mistake here. On the mountain peak, shadows retreated one after another. Among the four imperial family's consecrators, Tianjizi turned his head and looked at the direction where the assassins left. He sighed tiredly and said, "The prayer is over. Let's go back." Yes. The two princes respectfully bowed and immediately followed the old man down the mountain. The four imperial family's consecrators followed with calm expressions. There was no change in their expressions because the Zhao family's daughter was kidnapped. Their mission was only to protect Tianjizi. The life and death of the others did not matter, even if it was the Zhao family's master or the two princes. Lord Tianjizi, can you tell Liusu about the misfortune of this trip? Zhao Tinkong could not help but ask the moment they passed by each other. Tianjizi stopped and sighed softly, her life is not in danger. However, it is still a sign of great danger. Quickly send someone to rescue her. In Beiyu City, the rain did not stop. In front of a secluded mansion, two people stopped. The woman looked at the man beside her and said calmly, "Thank you for sending me off. May I know how to address you?" "Ningchen, where is the lady?" "Bai Yun Lian." Chapter 492. In the Zhao family's Inua tower, a black robe flashed by. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his cold eyes were filled with killing intent. In front of the hole pierced by the Yin Moon Bao the day before, a series of temporary restrictive spells started to shake violently. A blood-red light flashed across the air, and then disappeared. Within the pagoda, Zhao Yulan's eyes suddenly snapped open. When she saw the person in front of her, her eyes flickered with killing intent. "Who are you?" asked Zhao Yulan coldly. The black-robed figure didn't say anything. He clenched his right hand, and in the midst of the blood-red light, a ferocious sword appeared. In an instant, the sound of thunder outside the tower became louder, illuminating the dusky sky. Crimson Viper. Zhao Yulan's pupils constricted. This was going to be troublesome. The black clothes fluttered, and a sword shocked the gods. Vicious might rippled outwards, cutting apart all of the restrictions in its path. Zhao Yulan waved her hand, causing the dark moon to tremble and descend from the sky. After several sieges, the allied forces led by the only one from the Taibai prefecture had already sent the red refining demons fighting characteristics to all the major sections. They couldn't fight against this demon with brute force. Otherwise, they would be defeated without a doubt. The best way was to suppress it with speed and reduce the chance for it to attack. With this thought in mind, Zhao Yulan prepared to draw her bow and suppress the enemy's attack. Unexpectedly, before she could draw her bow, the black-clothed figure had already disappeared. In the blink of an eye, depravity was so fast that no one had time to react. Zhao Yulan subconsciously dodged to the side. But then she heard a ripping sound as blood dripped down from her arm, dyeing her clothes red. How could this be? Zhao Yulan was shocked. The information from the various sects clearly stated that the Crimson Refinement Devil was more focused on power and less focused on speed. Clearly, something was wrong with the current situation. The information was wrong. Zhao family's Yulan had made a mistake and her every move was restricted. The black-clothed man flashed past at an extremely fast speed, each sword faster than the previous one. He did not give the former the slightest chance to catch her breath. Without enough time to condense true essence, Zhao Yulan could only passively dodge. However, the black-clothed man's sword was astonishingly fast. There was no way to dodge. Enin sentiments. Seeing that the situation was becoming more and more disadvantageous, Zhao Yulan took the blow head-on. She waved her delicate hand, and her true essence surged into the moon. Instantly, the heavenly bow was knocked, and an arrow pierced through the air. The arrow light arrived, but the man in black didn't retreat. Instead, he advanced. He seemed to be very familiar with the former's moves. He hid behind the woman and formed a sword with his finger. The arrow arrived, and so did the sword. Blood splattered everywhere. Zhao Yulan let out a muffled groan and staggered back several steps. Her mouth was bright red. The battle was so fast that it left everyone shocked. From beginning to end, only several breaths of time had passed. The Eclipse family's Yulan was miserably defeated. Her body was heavily wounded and blood flowed out, dyeing the pagoda stone beneath her red. The black-clothed figure took out a piece of black cloth and dipped it in the fresh blood flowing from the woman's body. Immediately, he waved his right hand and covered the heavenly bow in the air with the black cloth. I owe you my life for now. After saying that, the black-clothed figure grabbed the Inua heavenly bow from the black cloth and quickly retreated. Pooh! Zhao Yulan coughed up another mouthful of blood. Her body was seriously injured, and her cultivation base was sealed. She fell down into the pagoda, her vision blurring. Yulan. Hearing the commotion, the two Zhao clan's grand elders hurried over. When they saw the unconscious woman on the ground, they were shocked and hurried over to check on her. The heavenly bow was lost and Yulan was heavily injured. This was a shocking result. It happened so quickly that the Zhao family's supreme elders didn't even have time to react. How could this be? With Yulan's strength, even the sect master wouldn't be able to easily defeat her. Could it be that a sovereign personally came? Asked one of the Zhao clan's supreme elders gloomily. It doesn't seem like it. The remnant pressure is far from a sovereign's level. From the traces of the battle, Yulan didn't even have the strength to fight back. Or perhaps it could be said that Yulan was completely suppressed from the start. The other Zhao clan's supreme elder calmly analyzed. Quickly wake Yulan up. I'll report this matter to the Grand Elder. Then we can discuss how to take back the heavenly bow. That's all we can do. A white-clothed figure walked over from the eastern wing. She opened the door and sat in front of a tea table, drinking tea while waiting for the trouble that would come every day. 4 hours later, the sky had darkened. The Zhao clan's major figures were gathered in the main hall. On the main seat, Zhao Tinkong's expression was incomparably gloomy. His terrifying aura made it hard for the people below to breathe. "When did this happen?" asked Zhao Tinkong coldly. 5 hours ago, an elder of the Grand Supreme Pavilion said. Zhao Tinkong clenched his fists. In just a short day, not only had Lu Su been kidnapped, even the Yin Moon Bao had been taken away. Reporting to the sect master, Elder Yulan has awakened. Just at this moment, a maid walked over and knelt on the ground. "What did she say?" asked Zhao Tinkong. Elder Yulan said that the person who took the bao was the Scarlet Refining Devil, said the maid. Bang! Zhao Tinkong's armrest on the right side of his chair was completely crushed. The fury he had been suppressing for an entire day could no longer be suppressed at this moment. "Since we know the main culprit, gather all the sects to discuss how to punish the devil once more." As he spoke, a white-robed old man with a white beard walked over and sat at the head of the seats below. He spoke calmly. "Grand Elder." One by one, the Zhao clan's experts stood up and bowed. Zhao Tinkong nodded slightly and then asked, "Other than the matter of taking back the Yin Moon Bao, we also need to quickly resolve the matter of Lu Su being kidnapped. Does Grand Elder have any suggestions?" "There are priorities. Zhao Liusu's matter can be discussed after we take back the Yin Moon Bao. The Heavenly Bao is the foundation of the Zhao clan, and we can't lose it," said Zhao Qinyang. "In the Zhao clan's heart, is a human life not worth a broken bao?" Just as Zhao Tinkong was about to speak, a bone-chilling voice resounded in the ears of everyone in the hall. In the next moment, Sui appeared. She looked at the old man at the head of the table with undisguised killing intent in her eyes. "When has an outsider's right to interfere in the Zhao clan's matters?" asked Zhao Qinyang. "Mr. Bai, I know you're worried about Lu Su's safety, but please don't be impatient. The Zhao clan will definitely come up with a solution that satisfies both sides," said Zhao Tinkong. "Sect Master, don't you think this matter is too simple? The Scarlet Refinement Demon has become second nature to killing people. It will definitely appear again soon. As for the people who kidnapped Zhao Liusu, we still don't have any clues," said Zhao Qinyang. "Grand Elder, you don't need to worry about this. I will send people to Qinji City for help. As long as we can find traces of those assassins, we'll be able to save Lu Su," said Zhao Tinkong. "Is that so? Then let's split up. The sect master will be in charge of saving Zhao Liusu. As for the matter of taking back the bao, leave it to the Grand Pavilion," said Zhao Qinyang. "All right." Zhao Tinkong nodded in agreement. After the discussion, the Grand Pavilion's elders left one by one. The only ones left were the sect master's experts. "Sect master, it's not worth giving up power to the Grand Pavilion for Zhao Liusu," said an elder. "I've already made up my mind. There's no need to say anything more. Also, quickly notify Lu Su's father and tell him to hurry back," said Zhao Tinkong. "Yes." The elder sighed and no longer said anything else. "Mr. Bai, I might have to trouble you with Lu Su's matter again. I hope you won't refuse," said Zhao Tinkong sincerely. "Yes." Ning Chen nodded in agreement. He immediately turned around and walked out of the hall. When he reached the door, he stopped for a moment and said, "Since Lu Su isn't in the Zhao family, there's no need for me to stay. I'll temporarily stay in Beiyu City for a period of time. If there's any news or needs, Sect Master can send someone over to notify me." After he finished speaking, Ning Chen strode off without looking back. "Just where did this person come from?" "Ping Ran, have you still not found anything?" asked a middle-aged man below. "No, there's no clue at all. It's as if this person appeared out of thin air. We can't find anything about his past." Opposite him, a woman in luxurious clothes shook her head. "That's strange. Even if he's a disciple of one of those great secluded sects in the Central Plains, there should be some clues." The middle-aged man frowned slightly. "Let's put this matter aside for now. As long as he sincerely treats Lu Su as a friend, he's a friend to the Zhao family and not an enemy. His identity will be discovered sooner or later, said Zhao Tinkong calmly. Within a secluded mansion in Beiyu City, a woman in a blue and white dress stood silently. She looked at the sky that was always covered in dark clouds. Her eyes were calm like stars, without the slightest impurity. She was ethereal and beautiful. Oh. Suddenly, the woman frowned slightly. Her gaze moved to a small mansion on the side, and specks of light flashed through her eyes. At the side of the mansion, Sui and the porter worked together, one in front and one behind. They used all their strength to knock down a large wooden box in a small courtyard. "Young master, what's inside?" "Why is it so heavy?" asked the porter as he gasped for breath. "Silver and copper coins." Ning Chen straightened his aching back and replied. The porter was stunned for a moment. Then he asked in confusion, "Young master, why don't you exchange this much silver for silver notes? It'll save you the trouble and it'll be safer." I don't want to either, but the owner of this mansion said that he only wants silver, and it has to be broken silver, said Ning Chen unhappily. "Young master, could it be that you've encountered a seller with a dirty background? Otherwise, who would do business like this?" asked the porter worriedly. "Whatever. Let's settle down first. It's not easy to buy a cheap mansion in the city these days." Ning Chen sighed. The porter nodded in agreement. He didn't say anything else and continued to help lift the box. After the two of them moved the box into the house, Ning Chen poured a cup of tea for the porter. Then he took out a piece of broken silver from the box and paid the porter. "Young master, if there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first. The owner of this mansion is a bit strange." "Young master should be careful," reminded the porter. "Thank you. I'll be careful." Ning Chen smiled. The porter took his load and left. Ning Chen was the only one left in the empty mansion. It was so quiet that it was a bit frightening. A pair of beautiful eyes looked over from the neighboring mansion. Even though they were separated by two walls, they still gave off an indescribable pressure. Ning Chen sensed the gaze from the other side of the courtyard, and the strange light in his eyes grew stronger. He was absolutely certain that he had met this woman before. Why didn't he have any impression of her? Bai Yunlian was an unfamiliar name. Just who was she? Was their meeting on Qingxi Bridge a coincidence, or did she have some other goal? After thinking for a long time, he couldn't come up with an answer. Ning Chen didn't waste any more time and left the mansion. On the other side of the courtyard, Bai Yunlian's lips curled. Had he finally been unable to endure it? Chapter 493. Dark clouds rolled in the sky above the northern imperial city. Thunder rumbled and the sky darkened. The oppressive atmosphere made people's hearts feel heavy. In a corner of the city, the two of them met again in front of a secluded mansion. The atmosphere was very quiet. Ning Chen looked at the woman in front of him. The sense of familiarity in his heart grew stronger and stronger. However, he still couldn't remember when he had seen her. "Young master, what's the matter?" Bai Yunlian was the first to speak. Ning Chen came back to his senses and smiled. "I am Bai Yujing. I just moved here and live next door. I want to go out and do some things. Unfortunately, I don't have an umbrella at home. Can I borrow one from you?" "Young master, what's your name?" Bai Yunlian frowned. "Bai Yujing," Ning Chen replied. Only then did Bai Yunlian notice that the clothes and appearance of the person in front of him had changed. His beautiful eyes flashed with an undetectable light. So he had changed his identity. "What's your name?" Ning Chen asked despite knowing the answer. "Bai Yunlian. So you're from the same family. What fate." Ning Chen smiled and tried to establish a relationship without blushing. "Is that so? What a coincidence." Bai Yunlian said indifferently. They hadn't seen each other in a few days, but this person's skin was still so thick. Boom! The thunder grew louder and louder. A drop of rain fell and grew bigger and bigger. In the blink of an eye, the entire northern imperial city was covered in rain. "Young miss, can I go in and take shelter from the rain?" Ning Chen glanced at the rain that was getting heavier and heavier. Bai Yunlian turned around and opened a path. "Come in." Ning Chen walked into the mansion and looked around. He couldn't help but be surprised. He could tell that this woman had also moved here not long ago. It was a bit strange. There couldn't be so many coincidences in the world. This woman definitely knew him. She just didn't point it out. "Young miss, have we met before?" Ning Chen turned around and asked. "Someone said the same thing to me yesterday." "Do all men like to say things like that to women they don't know?" Bai Yunlian said indifferently. "Perhaps." Ning Chen smiled and didn't ask any more questions. Thunder rumbled in the horizon, and the falling rain made the scenery outside hazy. Bai Yunlian stood quietly in front of the door, not saying a word. He was very quiet. Ning Chen looked at the former and tried to recall. However, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't remember where he had seen such a woman. Strange. Ning Chen felt even more strange. If someone looked like him, it would be normal for no one to recognize him on the streets. However, how could he not have any impression of a woman like Bai Yunlian after meeting her? Bai Yunlian turned a blind eye to the former's gaze, as if he was already used to it. Bang bang bang. At this moment, there was a knock on the door of the courtyard next door. It could be heard clearly even from a distance. Ning Chen retracted his gaze and looked at the house next to him. He frowned. Could it be that he was here to collect the money for the house? "Miss, can I borrow an umbrella?" "Perhaps the owner of the house is here to collect money," said Ning Chen. When Bai Yunlian heard this, he turned around and walked back into the house. He took out an oil paper umbrella and handed it to the former. "I will return it to the girl soon." Ning Chen took the umbrella and walked out of the mansion. Bai Yunlian looked at the former's back and a strange smile appeared on her face. She had previously thought that he was very smart, but it turned out that he wasn't able to guess everything. In front of the house, there were 3 men and 1 woman standing next to the carriage. When they saw the young man walking over, their expressions clearly weren't very good. Sorry. I went to borrow an umbrella." Ning Chen smiled apologetically to the 4 of them and quickly opened the door to let them in. "Where's the money? Is it ready?" The only woman among the 4 of them coldly asked. "It's ready. It's in the house." Ning Chen nodded. "You two, follow him in and take the money." The woman looked at the 2 people behind her and calmly said, "Yes." The 2 men accepted the order and walked into the courtyard. Looking at the young man who still hadn't moved, they glared at him and said, "What are you waiting for?" "Right away," Ning Chen replied and quickly walked over. Not long after, the 2 men carried a large box out and placed it on the carriage. Then they walked in front of the woman and respectfully said, "Miss, there's no mistake." "Give him the deed to the house and the land," said the woman indifferently. "Yes." The man holding the umbrella for the woman took out the deed to the house and the land and handed it over. "From now on, this house is yours." Ning Chen took it and casually glanced over it. He smiled, "Many thanks. Do you want to go in and have some tea?" "No need. Huaishuan, let's go." The woman spoke before turning around and entering the carriage. The man put away the umbrella and sat in front of the carriage with the other 2. Seeing them leave, Ning Chen gently shook his head. Strange things happened every year, but this year there were especially many. These people didn't seem to have simple backgrounds. What did they need so much money for? Outside Swallow Cloud Mountain, in the ancient temple outside the mountain, Buddhist believers came to pray to Buddha. The world was filled with suffering and countless things that didn't go their way. The majority of Buddhist believers came to pray to Buddha. Rather than saying they were praying to Buddha, it was better to say they were praying for peace of mind. Within the temple, Bodhi continued to build the pagoda day and night. Drops of Buddhist blood dyed the pagoda stone, causing it to shine even brighter. Within Gold Buddha Temple, all the monks knew that a Buddha had come to build the pagoda. Even the abbot was exceptionally respectful to him. The abbot had said that this was a true Buddha, a Buddha who was merciful and cared for all living beings. "Master, my grandfather is sick. Do you think Buddha will help my grandfather recover?" A little boy in shabby clothes looked at the white-robed, white-haired Buddha in front of him and asked expectantly. "It will." Bodhi raised a hand and gently patted the little boy's head. The little boy smiled. One of his canine teeth was missing, which looked a bit funny. However, his clean smile was very sincere, without any other emotions mixed in. 2 days later, the little boy came again. This time, the smile on his face was even wider. He looked at the Buddha in the temple and said, "Master, my grandfather's illness has been cured. It must be the Buddha's manifestation." Bodhi squatted down and wiped the dust off the little boy's face. "There is no Buddha in this world. Buddha is a human's heart. If you do good, you will be rewarded with good. Do you understand?" The little boy nodded as if he understood. He asked, "Master, if there is no Buddha in this world, then what is the temple worshipping?" "Hope," Bodhi replied softly. The little boy entered the temple and bowed to the Buddha before leaving. Not long after, the abbot came over. He was an old monk of virtue and prestige. He looked at the white-robed, white-haired Buddha in front of him and said respectfully, "Venerable, there has been a lot of rain at the foot of the mountain recently. The water level of Qingxi Lake has already exceeded the warning line. It could overflow at any time and bring disaster to the villages downstream." Bodhi sighed softly and stopped what he was doing. He took off his Buddha robe and handed it to the old monk. He said, "Abbot, send people downstream to cover the Buddha robe on the embankment. The flood will be stopped." "Many thanks, Venerable." The old abbot took the Buddha robe and bowed with his hands clasped together before retreating. Bodhi collected his thoughts and continued to focus on building the pagoda. Demons were wreaking havoc on the world. He hoped that there was still time to build the pagoda. Rumble. Thunder rumbled in the sky. The light illuminated the dark sky and the benevolent heart of the Buddha. In Beiyu City, Zhao Liusu had been taken away for 10 days. However, there was still no news from the Zhao family. Ning Chen also did not go to the Zhao family again. He knew very well that Liusu would not be in any danger for the time being. He could not do anything about that mark, and the others were the same. Right now, Zhao Tinkong should be even more anxious than him. If there was any news, he would definitely send someone to deliver it in time. At this time, no one would complain about having too much combat power. Another thing was that after 10 days, he still could not remember when he had seen that Lady Bai. Even though every time he saw her eyes, he felt an indescribable sense of familiarity. When had he seen her? Ning Chen knocked hard on his head. It didn't make sense. How could he not remember? In the dead of night, Ning Chen left the courtyard and headed east. 3,000 miles away, in the sword-forging manor, a black figure flashed past. His killing intent soared into the sky, waking everyone in the manor. In the manor, an old man sitting in a wheelchair looked at the black-clothed young man in front of him with a serious expression. His gaze turned cold. "It's you," said the sword-forging master. "Last time, I spared your life. Today, I've come to take it back," said the black-clothed figure calmly. "Then let's see if you have the ability." The sword-forging master pointed a finger, and sword intent soared out of his body. This swordsman's cultivation base had advanced by half a step. He was almost at the chosen realm. The black-clothed figure waved his hand, and red light flashed. Qi Lian appeared, and a terrifying pressure swept out. Please. The black-clothed figure disappeared in the blink of an eye. His sword contained monstrous killing intent, and it cut through the endless night. The sword-forging master's expression didn't panic at all. His sword pointed a finger, and a shockwave spread out. Sword-forging master. In the distance, one figure after another appeared. When they saw the black-clothed figure in the battlefield, they were clearly shaken. Don't come over! Shouted the sword-forging master. His sword energy turned into a wall of swords that blocked the battlefield, preventing anyone from entering. Your benevolence will sever your last hope of survival. Sword-forging master, hell, please. As soon as he finished speaking, the black-clothed figure condensed Yuan with his fingers and slashed it across the sword. Instantly, a torrent of undercurrents spread out endlessly. A terrifying ferocious aura covered the 9 heavens and the bright moon. The sword-forging master condensed his Yuan, and strands of sword intent soared into the sky. His extraordinary sword had been raised to the peak. He had spent his entire life guarding the demon sword, protecting the common people. How could he lower his head in front of a demon cultivator? A king meeting a king, and a sword meeting a sword. Peak sword intent soared above the two of them, surpassing all other swords in the world. The two kings at the peak of the sword began their battle once more. At the same time, a white-robed figure appeared 100 miles away from the sword-forging manor. She calmly watched the battle in the distance. Under the bright moon, her ethereal eyes seemed even more beautiful. Chapter 494. Sword Crafting Manor was a life-and-death battle between kings of the sword. Scarlet Drill's sword light tore through the night, and the endless blood made this battle even more tragic. Black Robe moved, and Scarlet Drill took his life. The path to the Yellow Springs opened. The two different swords were shockingly fast. Sword Crafting Master's wheelchair moved, dodging the swords. In an instant, sword fingers and swords clashed. With a boom, the wheelchair sank 3 inches into the ground, and dust filled the air. Sword Crafting Master, you've become weaker. Black Robe's sword spun, and the spinning sword moved another 3 inches forward. Sword Crafting Master's movements were restricted, so he slapped the ground and stabilized himself. Then, he gathered the manor's earth energy and used 70% of his strength. With a loud boom, the battle separated. The two retreated several steps, and blood dripped onto the ground. Demonic technique, blood flame. Blood flames rose, and sword intent surged. Phoenix fire gathered to form a killing aura, and the sword split the 9 heavens as it slashed down. 100 generations of Jianhu end with one sword. Sword Crafting Master gathered all his true essence and turned it into an extreme sword. The sword aura went against the heavens and broke through the demonic technique. Sword Crafting Master's body exploded, and sand flew everywhere. The wheelchair moved once more, and blood flowed from Sword Crafting Master's arm. In that battle, Sword Crafting Master's sword was broken, and his body was crippled. Although his cultivation had improved by half a step, his cultivation and combat power were no longer at their peak. Facing Scarlet Drill, who was at the life-knowing stage, he was once again at a disadvantage. Sword Crafting Master didn't want the demonic calamity to descend again, so he gathered his true essence once more. The sword broke through the bloody light and circled the sky. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into one and tore through the sky. Seeing this, Scarlet Drill used the evil energy in the world to block Sword Crafting Master's move. With a loud boom, Black Robe was forced back several steps, and his blood chi churned violently. On the other side, Sword Crafting Master vomited blood once more. His old injuries hadn't healed, and he didn't have much strength left. Ning Chen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. This old man was indeed extraordinary. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't move, it would be difficult to defeat him. Outside the battle, many people looked anxiously at the battle. They wanted to help, but they couldn't. Please, let Grandpa's sword crafting master. A little girl knelt down, crying and begging. After one person knelt down, everyone knelt down and begged the demonic cultivator to spare their sword master. Ling, get up. The people of the sword forging villa do not kneel to anyone. Sword Master Zhu glanced at the little girl in front of the crowd and shouted in a deep voice, "Let's go." Ning Chen swung his sword and slashed open the sword wall. He walked towards the little girl in front of the crowd step by step. "If you die, I will spare his life." The cold sword tip shone with the light of death in front of the little girl. The black-clothed, black-haired figure did not have any human emotions in his eyes. "All right, you have to keep your word." There was a trace of fear in the little girl's eyes at first, but then she nodded firmly and leaned forward to bump into the sword. Boom! Unknowingly, the dark clouds in the sky covered the moon once again, and the rumbling of thunder resounded through the sky. With a rumble, thunder lit up the night sky. Under the light of the lightning, a soul-stirring scene appeared. The little girl, who was only 7 or 8 years old, gave up her life without hesitation. A sword pierced her body, and blood spurted out like a fountain. The sword pierced through his body, and blood dripped down. Everyone present was shocked. The heavens could not bear it any longer. Heavy rain poured down, blurring everyone's vision. Ling, Behind the crowd, a young woman crazily pushed through the crowd and charged forward. However, before she could even get close, she was blown away by a strand of sword intent. "Sword Master Zhu, I'll spare your life." Ning Chen silently carried the little girl in the pool of blood, and then his figure flashed as he swiftly left into the distance. 100 miles away, Bai Yunlian's eyes lit up when he saw this. He also turned and left. It seemed that the world was not completely filthy. That little girl was not ordinary. If she didn't die this time, her future would be limitless. In a small, secluded residence in the western part of northern Imperial City, Ning Chen looked at the unconscious little girl on the bed. He flipped his palm, and a drop of bright red blood flew out and slowly entered the little girl's heart. It was a quiet night. Ning Chen quietly stayed by the little girl's side until daybreak. The little girl's injuries gradually stabilized. Only then did he carry her out of the courtyard. Clang! There was a knock on the door. Not long after, the door creaked open. What entered his eyes was still that pair of beautiful eyes. "Miss Bai, I have something to do in the next few days. Can you help me take care of her for a while?" Ning Chen asked sincerely. Bai Yunlian looked at the little girl in the former's arms and didn't ask any questions. He said indifferently, "Bring her in." "Thank you." Ning Chen thanked him and immediately carried the little girl into the mansion. Bai Yunlian's room was simple and plain. There weren't any extra decorations. It didn't look like a girl's room. Ning Chen wasn't too surprised. Among the people he knew, there weren't many normal people. The little girl was still unconscious on the clean wooden bed. She still looked very pale. Although her injuries had stabilized, she had lost too much blood. She wouldn't wake up for a while. "What's her name?" Bai Yunlian asked. Ling, Ning Chen replied. "Yes." Bai Yunlian nodded and said calmly, "You can leave. She'll be fine with me. Then I'll leave it to you." Ning Chen glanced at the little girl on the bed with an apologetic expression, sighed in his heart, and then turned around and left. Zhao family, highest pavilion. A secret report was placed on a table in front of everyone, causing the atmosphere to become heavy. "Who's going?" asked Zhao Qingyang. "This devil's strength is extraordinary. Aside from Yulan, only the second elder is a match for him," said an old man calmly from beneath the seat. "It'll be very difficult for me to defeat him by myself," said a middle-aged man at the head of the table. "There's no need to force yourself. You just need to bring people to delay him." As soon as you find any traces of him, immediately notify me, said Zhao Qinyang. Grand Elder, you want to personally take action? Asked another Grand Elder. Is there any other way? Asked Zhao Qinyang indifferently. Everyone was silent. Yulan was heavily injured, and the sect master's faction was unable to use their power. Only the Grand Elder would have a chance. Of the Zhao family's 3 heavenly bows, aside from the star mark that had been lost over 10 years ago, the Great Sun Divine Bow had always been controlled by the sect master's faction. As for the Inua Bow, it was guarded by the highest pavilion. It could be said that the Inua Bow's existence was the key for the highest pavilion to contend against the sect master's faction. They had to take it back as soon as possible. On a high platform in Heavenly Fate City, the current Heavenly Fate Master was looking at Heavenly Fate. Suddenly, blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, dyeing his robes red. The fiendish demons were wreaking havoc in the world. The dynasty was in trouble. Send someone to tell the Zhao family's sect master that the people he's looking for are at Swallow Cloud Mountain. Xuan Tianhe sent out the trace of clarity he had obtained from Heavenly Fate. At the same time, the continuous rain at the lower reaches of Qingxi Lake caused the lake water to overflow. Just as the dam was about to burst, a white Buddhist robe blossomed with a dazzling light that transformed into an invisible barrier that blocked the pouring lake water. The Buddha has appeared. In the villages downstream, the commoners knelt down one by one, looking at the miracle in the distance with excited expressions. In the ancient temple at the foot of the mountain, a third of the Bodhi Pagoda had already been completed. The reappearance of the demon-subduing pagoda would sweep away the fiendish demons for the human world. The pagoda's Buddhist nature was complete and Buddhist light shone brightly. The Buddha had used Buddhist blood to make the light on the pagoda even clearer. In the Zhao family's meeting hall, Bai Yi appeared. On the main seat, Zhao Tinkong looked at the young man in front of him. With a wave of his hand, a letter from the Heavenly Fate Pavilion flew into the latter's hands. Swallow Cloud Mountain. Ning Chen looked at the location on the letter and frowned. He asked, when do we leave? To prevent any accidents from happening, we'll leave tonight, Zhao Tinkong said seriously. Ning Chen nodded and sat down on a chair below. He did not say anything as he waited for the night to arrive. In the grand pavilion, a Zhao family disciple walked over and whispered a few words in Zhao Qinyang's ear before respectfully retreating. That young man surnamed Bai is here, Zhao Qinyang said. That means Heavenly Fate City has found traces of Zhao Liusu, a grand elder said with a strange expression. Most likely, Zhao Qinyang nodded. How fast? On the main seat, a middle-aged man sighed. Dark clouds covered Swallow Cloud Mountain. Under the pitch-black night sky, silhouettes appeared one after another, silently disappearing into the mountain. An hour later, at the agreed location, those figures once more gathered. They looked at each other and shook their heads. Nothing. Zhao Tinkong's expression was gloomy. How could there be nothing? Heavenly Fate City's divination techniques had never been wrong. Could it be that the news was leaked and those people moved to another location? Ning Chen frowned. That shouldn't be the case. Only a few people know about this, and they're all trustworthy people, replied Zhao Tinkong. There's one person who's not trustworthy, snorted one of the Zhao family's experts. Don't spout nonsense. Mr. Bai has been waiting in the meeting hall ever since he received the news. He hasn't left even a step, said Zhao Tinkong. Ning Chen didn't care about other people's suspicions. After thinking for a moment, he said, the next time Heavenly Fate City sends news, there's no need for you to wait for me. Before you leave, just send someone to tell me the location. Zhao Tinkong nodded thoughtfully. I understand Mr. Bai's meaning. I still have things to do, so I'll be leaving first. See you later. After saying that, Sui left, disappearing into the night in an instant. Sect Master, what did he mean by that? Asked the Zhao family's protector. He was reminding me that there might be a traitor in the Zhao family, said Zhao Tinkong. Within the grand pavilion, a flickering light flickered. A figure stood in a room, calmly waiting for news. Just as the night was about to end, an almost undetectable golden light soared into the sky. The figure in the room instantly vanished. 3,000 miles away, in the wilderness not far from the sword-forging manor, 3 bows crossed as they fought a devil. Outside the battle, the Grand Pavilion's second Grand Elder, Zhao Feixiao, raised his bow, and a dazzling golden ancient bow appeared. The instant the bow was drawn, thousands of arrows spiraled into the sky. In the next moment, they transformed into a rain of arrows that fell down. With a rumbling sound, the area 3,000 meters around them caved in. A heavenly prison of arrow light appeared, locking down the devil. Within the prison of arrows, the black-robed figure looked at the 4 people in front of him. A cold light flashed in his eyes. After planning for so long, this moment had finally arrived. Chapter 495. The night was cold and bleak, the arrow prison trapped the demon. The golden brilliance kept circling endlessly, sealing off all paths of retreat. Within the arrow prison, 3 bows supported the bow technique. Together with the formation, they killed the demon. Outside the battle, Zhao Feixiao was waiting for an opportunity to make a move. The tip of his arrow locked onto the target. Crimson drill moved, bloody light illuminating the world. Its extremely fast figure dodged one arrow after another. Then, the sword broke through the air, slashing towards one of them. Whoosh! The instant the sword arrived, the arrow followed. The black-robed figure soared again, dodging the arrow. The 3 of them worked together, taking turns to attack and defend. Their tacit understanding was flawless. They actually managed to eliminate the threat of the swordsman's extreme speed to the greatest extent. Not bad coordination. Unfortunately, I'm tired of fighting. The black-robed figure waved his sword, absorbing the evil energy of heaven and earth. Immediately, evil energy gathered in the sword. A monstrous baleful aura surged out. He slashed out, using force to break technique. Outside the battlefield, Zhao Feixiao saw this and bent his ancient bow. Golden light rose, and an arrow met the sword. With a loud bang, sand flew everywhere, covering the eyes for an instant. The black-robed figure disappeared again, and the fallen sword instantly arrived in front of one of them. At the same time, 2 arrows flew over and pierced through the black-robed figure. The black-robed figure was shocked to see that it was only an afterimage. Ugh! A sword entered the body, and blood splattered. The black-robed figure who had appeared in front of another person at some point in time pierced the latter's chest with a sword. He immediately pulled out his sword and retreated. With the formation broken, danger appeared. Zhao Feixiao's expression became serious. His figure flashed, and he stepped into the formation, wanting to fix the formation's flaw. With one less person holding the formation, how much of a threat do you think this formation still has? The black-robed figure condensed his evil energy again. His feet turned, and his sword moved. A sword turned the sky, and bloody sand filled the sky. Zhao Feixiao flipped his palm to block the sword. With a bang, the sand scattered, and the sword intent disappeared. However, the other 2 people in the matrix were not so lucky. The difference in their cultivation and foundation made it difficult for them to block the sword will like the former. Amidst the dust, the sword will passed through their bodies. Blood gushed out like rain. With 2 bangs, the 2 figures fell to the ground. Blood dyed the ground, and they never stood up again. The battle situation changed in an instant, shocking everyone. The black-robed man with the ominous sword in his hand was surrounded by a baleful aura. His cultivation was no longer his weakness. Between his moves, killing intent was revealed. Knowing that the first elder would be here soon, Zhao Feixiao did not want to fight head-on. His golden bow was like a crescent moon. Streaks of golden arrow lights sealed off his opponent's path. He focused on defense, trying his best to stall for time. On the other hand, He led the killing with his vicious sword. A bloody brilliance blossomed in the dark night. His afterimages were like illusions. His attacks were exceptionally swift and fierce. Demonic form, blood flame. The phoenix fire turned into bloody flames, and the killing move appeared in the human world. It was a demonic move born from the sword form, and it came from the same source. When the phoenix body used it, it was almost impossible to distinguish the real from the fake. Its might was astonishing. As the killing move approached, Zhao Feixiao condensed his qi and bent his bow to the extreme. 3 golden arrows crisscrossed and shot out, blocking the sword light that was coming at him at an extremely fast speed. A terrifying sound of collision rang out as the arrow and sword light dissipated. However, the ominous sword qi was unstoppable. It entered Zhao Feixiao's body along with the aftershock, bringing out a waterfall of dazzling blood red. Amidst the dust, He Yi's sword did not stop. It quickly passed through the flying sand and arrived in front of the former in an instant. His sword pierced through the former's body, and with a wave of his sword, he flung the person on the sword away. With a bang, the figure crashed into the ground. Dust and sand flew up, dyeing the ground red. The 4 people had been defeated. He Yi walked to the arrow prison and slashed with his sword. The arrow prison shattered, turning into specks of light that dissipated between heaven and earth. At this moment, a white-bearded old man in white clothes rushed over from the distance. His powerful aura was infinitely close to the human sovereign realm. The pressure he gave off was almost on par with the Zhao clan's master. 3 breaths later, the Zhao clan's number 1 Grand Elder, the head of the Grand Pavilion, arrived. "I've been waiting for you, Zhao Qingyang." In the dark night, He Yi stood there quietly, looking at the person in front of him. Zhao Qingyang glanced at the 4 people who had fallen into the dust not far away. His expression sank. Zhao Feixiao's group had actually been defeated so quickly. It was truly beyond his expectations. "What is your goal?" Zhao Qingyang asked in a deep voice. "Your life," He Yi said indifferently. "With just you?" "Idiot." Zhao Qingyang's eyes turned cold. He clenched his right hand and a black sword appeared. Its cold aura was actually very similar to the Inue heavenly bow. In the next moment, the sword moved and a cold aura spread out. The ground was instantly covered in frost. The Inue sword revealed its sharpness for the first time. He Yi's eyes narrowed. He turned around and dodged the Inue sword. Then, he turned around and used Scarlet Drill Life. Clang! The 2 swords clashed and light scattered. Ice crystals condensed on the swords. They were actually trying to forcefully seal the fiendish aura within the Scarlet Drill sword. Seeing this, He Yi changed the direction of his sword and shook off the 2 frozen swords. Then, he retreated a few meters. His sword was like a willow, quickly restraining the strange power within the Inue sword. Not bad. Seeing that his opponent had changed his move, Zhao Qingyang shook off the person in front of him and focused. The moonlight on his sword shone brightly and a boundless cold aura spread out. His ultimate move was about to appear. Whirlwind clouds, red sword. When the ultimate move appeared, a red glow appeared under the moonlight. A sword passed through a crack and 100 li was sealed in ice. He Yi's eyes sank and he no longer hesitated. He clenched his left hand and Yama appeared. Both swords shone with a sharp light and a huge phoenix image appeared behind him. An instant later, He Yi moved. His left hand used 9 suns burning the 9 provinces while his right hand used sword-style moon splendor. Both moves appeared and intersected. When the 2 ultimate moves collided, there was a short moment of silence. Then, it was like the sky was collapsing and the earth was collapsing. The ground within 100 li trembled violently and huge cracks appeared, spreading out without end. "You are not Scarlet Drill Demon. Who are you?" Amidst the aftershock, Zhao Qingyang let out a muffled groan and took a few steps back. He looked at the black-clothed young man before him with a shocked expression as he spoke in a low voice. "The person who will kill you." Ning Chen moved again. Yama activated Yellow Springs Road and the 9 suns rotated. An ultimate yang cultivation technique clashed with the ultimate yin sword. The swords clashed and the flowers bloomed and withered in an instant. This was the short life of the ice flower. Yin and yang countered each other and cancelled each other out. The fight between the swords was once again balanced. Sword style, breaking mountains. In close combat, Scarlet Drill Demon used 1,000 caddies. With a loud boom, it broke through the mountains. Zhao Qingyang swung his sword to block. He groaned and retreated a few more steps. The two swords used completely different methods. However, they both had peak attainments in the sword. The Zhao clan's Grand Elder was in danger. "You are so capable at such a young age. I can't let you live. Hand over your life." Zhao Qingyang's expression turned grave when he saw his opponent's shocking sword attainments. The Yin Moon sword's cold chi pierced through the sky. Dark clouds stirred in the sky. A trace of moonlight shone through a huge whirlpool and onto the sword. The shocking phenomenon caused the wind and clouds within 100 li to go berserk. Heaven's descent. When the power of laws appeared, Ning Chen's expression turned serious. He took a step forward and leaped into the air. His two swords formed two moves. One was Rising Sun, and the other was 9 suns burning the world. The ultimate yang moves turned into a divine sun that could burn the sky and boil the sea, pressing down from the sky. The two extremes clashed. Everything disappeared as far as the eye could see. The ground crumbled inch by inch, sinking several meters. The endless wasteland turned into scorched earth. Heavenly Book. Zhao Qingyang staggered. His eyes were full of shock. A moment later, blood gushed out from his chest. Evil chi entered his body and destroyed his meridians. On the other side, blood flowed down from the black-robed man's arms. After the ultimate move, he was also badly injured. Ugh! Zhao Qingyang spat out a mouthful of blood. He leaned on the sword in his hand and covered his chest that was bleeding. He was shocked at first, but then he laughed crazily. "Kid, have you run out of strength? What a pity. My battle has just begun. Life and death, samsara substitution." In the crazed laughter, a golden talisman on Zhao Qingyang's chest bloomed with dazzling light. The substitution talisman had appeared for the first time. In the blink of an eye, the substitution talisman dissipated. The next moment, the Grand Elder moved. He slapped out and the black-robed man flew out. His blood stained the sand. "You didn't expect this, did you? Man proposes, God disposes. I will take your life." Zhao Qingyang walked forward step by step. He pressed his palm against the Grand Elder's head and was about to end his life. At this moment, a black blade light appeared and blocked the Grand Elder's palm power. Then he carried the seriously injured Knowing Destiny and left quickly. Tears of the burial of flowers, butterfly in flowers, damn it. Seeing the two people disappear in the dark, Zhao Qingyang looked very gloomy. He did not expect butterfly in flowers to appear at this time. All his efforts were in vain. In a remote house in Beiyu City, a blue light flashed. Hua Zhongjie appeared with a severely injured Knowing Destiny. Without saying a word, she stuffed an elixir into Knowing Destiny's mouth and then gathered her qi to help him heal. Half an hour later, Ning Chen opened his eyes and looked at the angry woman in front of him. He smiled apologetically and said, "Senior sister. Do you want to die for a stupid talisman? If I came a little later, you would be dead." Butterfly in Flowers scolded angrily. "I believe you will come in time." Ning Chen smiled tiredly and said. Butterfly in Flowers was very angry, but she could not bear to blame him anymore. She changed the topic and asked, "How do you get the substitution talisman? Do you understand?" "Yes." Ning Chen nodded and said, "The time is very short. Even if I am prepared, I only have a moment. If I miss it, the substitution technique will be completed and the substitution talisman will disappear." Butterfly and Flowers thought for a moment and softly asked, "Do you need me to do it?" "No need. We still need the Zhao family to rescue Liusu. In addition, the strange consciousness in Liusu's fate spirit is definitely related to Zhao Tinkong and the Zenith Pavilion. Before we can ensure Liusu's safety, the balance between the two factions can't be broken. Do you know who did it?" Butterfly and Flower's eyes flashed with a strange light. "There's a 30% chance it was Zhao Tinkong's act. There's a 60% chance it was the Zenith Pavilion scheme. As for the last 10%, there's the involvement of other factions. But the possibility is very small. Zhao Liusu's constitution was indeed extraordinary, but it was not worth it for a faction to make such a big fuss. As for the secret behind her constitution, there should be no more than 5 people, including him, who knew about it. The matter of the strange consciousness was too secretive. Apart from the person behind it, it was very difficult for other factions to find out. In addition, during the night attack, Zhao Yolan's 2 arrows had appeared to be helping him. But based on the situation when he had fought with her, if Zhao Yulan had used her full strength that day, those 2 half-step exalts would not have been able to escape unscathed. From all the signs, this was just a game between the 2 factions of the Zhao family. As for him, he was nothing more than a chess piece on Zhao Tinkong's chessboard. Aristocratic families were deep, but human relationships were cold. Only when all the chess pieces had been placed could one see how cold people were. Chapter 496. Within the Zhao family's Jingyu pavilion, there was an incense burner, 2 cups of tea, and 2 chess pieces. Each move was filled with danger and killing intent. The chess players were as calm as water. The big picture covered the sky, and the chess pieces were merciless. Half an hour later, the final word was uttered, and the dragon was resurrected, turning around in a full circle. "It's been a while since we last met. Sect Master's chess skills have become even purer. I truly admire you." The azure-robed man across from Zhao Tinkong put down the chess piece in his hand and smiled. The Zhao family's Jingluan was full of wisdom. Although he was low-key, no one doubted his talent. He was one of the people the Zenith Pavilion feared the most. "After probing, we've confirmed that Liusu's capture was done by the Zenith Pavilion," said Zhao Tinkong. "The Zenith Pavilion's ambitions are clear." Unfortunately, Zhao Qingyang was too impatient. Now that his replacement talisman has been destroyed, he's at the end of the road, smiled Zhao Jingluan. "Since you've returned, I'll leave Liusu's matter to you," said Zhao Tinkong. "As a father, I couldn't ask for more," said Zhao Jingluan. "Bai Yujing is a pretty good chess piece. She's someone who values relationships. If we use her well, she'll be of great help to us," reminded Zhao Tinkong as he looked at the chess piece on the board. "Bai Yujing? Heh, it seems I'll have to find time to pay a visit to my daughter's savior," smiled Zhao Jingluan as he raised his teacup. Within a small courtyard in Beiyu City, Ning Chen was sitting in front of a table, calmly organizing his thoughts. There were no butterflies in the courtyard. The only thing that remained was a messenger bird chirping on a tree branch. It added a bit of life to the quiet courtyard. Clang! The sound of knocking came from outside the courtyard. Ning Chen came back to his senses and walked over to open the door. In front of him were 2 figures, one large and one small. What attracted Ning Chen the most was still that pair of star-like eyes. They were so familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen them before. "Please come in," said Ning Chen softly. Bai Yunlian held the little girl's hand and walked into the courtyard. Ning Chen closed the courtyard door and walked behind them. The little girl turned her head and smiled. Her face was still a little pale, but it was now flushed red. Her body is fine. I came to return her to you, said Bai Yunlian. Many thanks. Ning Chen raised his head and looked at the woman before him as he spoke with a serious expression. There's no need to thank me. Accompany me to the Golden Buddha Temple and we'll be even, Bai Yunlian said calmly. Gold Buddha Temple. Ning Chen frowned slightly. He had heard of this name before. Recently, the people of the North Imperial City had spread the rumor that Buddha had appeared in the Golden Buddha Temple. Many people who went to pray had come true. He had never believed in the matter of praying to Buddha. If Buddha had a spirit, the human world would not be so miserable. Miss, do you believe in Buddhism? Ning Chen asked. I don't believe you, Bai Yunlian replied. Then why is Miss going to the temple? Ning Chen asked, puzzled. There's an old friend in the temple. Let's go pay him a visit, Bai Yunlian said indifferently. When Ning Chen heard this, a strange light flashed in his eyes. He didn't ask any more questions. He took a step forward and squatted down. Looking at the little girl, he said gently, Ling, your big sister Bai and I are going to the Gold Buddha Temple. Are you going to wait at home or come with us? Ling tilted her head and thought for a moment before saying softly, let's go together. Ning Chen nodded and said, it's a long journey. Let me know if you're tired. The little girl replied obediently. Then, 2 big and 1 small figure left the small courtyard and walked out of the North Imperial City. Not long after, the little girl was tired and fell asleep in a certain someone's arms. After days of heavy rain, the lake water was close to the bridge. There was no one on the bridge at the time of the flood. The 2 of them walked across and went into the distance. At the ancient temple at the foot of the mountain, the incense was flourishing. When the 2 of them walked over, it was already noon. In the temple, people came and went. Bai Yunlian had just stepped into the ancient temple when he frowned. An uncomfortable feeling rose in his heart. What's wrong? Ning Chen asked when he saw the former's strange expression. Nothing. Bai Yunlian suppressed the abnormality in his body and his expression returned to normal. When the 2 of them entered the temple, Ling was also awakened by the bell in the temple. She rubbed her eyes and slid down from a certain someone's arms in a daze. There's a lot of people. Don't run around. Ning Chen patted the little girl's head and said softly. Ling nodded. She grabbed the former's hand and looked around curiously. After a while, she let go of a certain someone's hand and ran to the Buddha statue. She imitated the adults beside her and began to pray. Ning Chen stood in place and waited quietly. Back then, when he took Mingyu away, she was also the same age. Now that more than 10 years had passed, the little girl who was clamoring to listen to stories should have grown up to be slender and elegant. Time passed so quickly. Unknowingly, Mingyu and Qi had grown up and could take charge of things. In the temple, Bai Yunlian looked around and then walked out of the main hall and towards the back of the temple. In the back of the temple, Bodhi's pagoda was almost half completed. On the pagoda, a golden light was faintly discernible. Bai Yunlian walked over and looked at the Buddha in front of the pagoda. His dreamy eyes flashed with intense killing intent. Bodhi turned around and saw the girl not far away. He frowned. It's her. The silent and oppressive atmosphere was so heavy that it was hard to breathe. Just as the situation was about to go out of control, a white-clothed girl walked over and broke the deadlock. The Jiming Marquis. Bodhi frowned once more. Oh. It seems Grandmaster has already gone to the eastern region. However, I'm now called White Jade Capital. Ning Chen smiled. You once saved the world. You shouldn't bring disaster to this world, said Bodhi. No one wants to be enemies with the world. We all have no choice. Of course, if Grandmaster wants to take action, I won't just sit and wait for death. Ning Chen glanced at the pagoda and smiled. This pagoda is not bad. Grandmaster spent a lot of effort to build it. I presume you have a great use for it. Demon Sealing Devil. Bodhi didn't hide anything. Then I'll have to trouble you, Grandmaster. However, I've always liked freedom. I might not be willing to be locked up in a pagoda like this, said Ning Chen calmly. In 100 years, this pagoda will help cleanse benefactor's body of killing karma. For benefactor, there are no disadvantages, said Bodhi. 100 years? If Grandmaster can tell me how to revive the dead, then let alone 100 years, even if I never leave this pagoda, I'll have no regrets, said Ning Chen. The samsara of life and death is irreversible. I'm powerless. Bodhi sighed. Then forgive me for not being able to comply, said Ning Chen. Do you know each other? Bai Yunlian softly asked after hearing their conversation. We do, said Ning Chen. Do you have enmity? Asked Bai Yunlian. Does Buddha and devil count as enmity? Ning Chen's lips curled. What a coincidence. We also have enmity, said Bai Yunlian. Oh. How can there be such a coincidence in this world? Since that's the case, why don't we join hands and destroy his pagoda, suggested Ning Chen. There's no rush. Let's wait until your injuries are healed. I just came today to say hello, said Bai Yunlian calmly. That's reasonable. Using peaceful means before resorting to force is the way of a gentleman. Ning Chen nodded in agreement. He pulled the girl toward the front courtyard. Bai Yunlian glanced at the Buddhists in front of the pagoda and also turned to leave. Once your body is better, I'll send you home. On the way back to the city, Ning Chen promised. All right. The little girl nodded obediently and replied. Within the city, Ning Chen stopped in front of a small courtyard. He frowned slightly as he looked at the girl beside him. He crouched down and warmly said, Go to Big Sister Bai's place first. I'll come pick you up in a bit. Bai Yunlian also sensed the unfamiliar aura in the courtyard. He didn't say anything. He held the girl's hand and walked toward his own residence. Watching the two of them leave, Ning Chen opened the door. There was an azure-robed man sitting in front of a stone table. His expression was calm, and his face was somewhat similar to Zhao Liusu's. It wasn't difficult to recognize him. Zhao Jingluan, Liusu's father. The azure-robed man stood up and introduced himself. There's no need to be so courteous. Please sit, said Ning Chen with a faint smile. I came this time to thank Mr. Bai for saving my daughter's life, said Zhao Jingluan sincerely. You're too courteous. Liusu and I are friends, so it's only right for me to help. Have you found Liusu's whereabouts? Asked Ning Chen calmly. The sect master has already sent people to Tianji City. There should be news soon, said Zhao Jingluan. Ning Chen nodded. Thinking for a moment, he warned, there might be spies for those assassins in the Zhao family. Please be careful. Thank you for the reminder. I will pay attention to this matter. It's getting late, and I still have matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first. Once there's news from Tianji City, I'll immediately send someone to inform you, said Zhao Jingluan. Take care, said Ning Chen calmly. Zhao Jingluan left after him. Ning Chen narrowed his eyes. The main character had finally returned. Now it was time to see just what role he would play in this situation. The Zhao family's muddy waters were truly unfathomable. In a certain region of the Central Plains, there was an immortal residence that stood high above the boundless mountains. It didn't appear in the mortal world. The Grand White Manor was a legendary place in the mortal world. Today, the human walker had returned. Ren Jyoga, who had been defeated by a devil, walked up the mountain step by step. His heart was filled with unwillingness and shame. As the only walker of the Grand White Manor, he was supposed to be the protector of the devil and uphold justice. But he had never imagined that he would be defeated by a devil. In front of the immortal residence, Renjioga knelt down and kowtowed in apology. "Get up." At that instant, a firm voice said calmly from the immortal abode. "Thank you, Manor Lord." Renjioga got up and said respectfully. "Those who have fallen into the devil's path will give up their emotions and desires. Their combat power will be far greater than ordinary people. 4,000 years ago, a human sovereign unfortunately fell in the Scarlet Devil's calamity. Now that the Devil's calamity has arisen again, it's indeed too difficult to rely on just you. Manor Lord, please advise me." Renjioga said unwillingly. "The homeland of the Western Buddha is a holy land for Buddhist cultivators. Since ancient times, Buddhism and the devil have been antagonistic. Go to Tianfu Mountain. The master of Tianfu Mountain, Guangzun, is an old friend of mine. Take this with you. Guangzun will naturally send people to help when he sees it." As soon as he finished speaking, a golden Buddhist bead slowly flew out of the immortal residence and landed in Renjioga's hand. "Thank you, Manor Lord." Renjioga glanced at the Buddhist bead in his hand, then bowed respectfully and left. Chapter 497. In Tianji City, Tianji, who had not rested for more than 10 days and nights, constantly tried to observe the secrets of heaven through the dark clouds. The exhaustion in his eyes had reached its peak. "Master, you can't look anymore, or your lifespan will run out." Below the Tianji stage, a handsome young man had a worried look on his face as he advised him again and again. However, on the stage, Tianji acted as if he did not hear him and continued to use all his strength to stir the clouds and peek into the heavenly Tao that humans could not peek into. Pfft! Suddenly, Swan Tianhe spat out blood, staining his purple robe red. The current Tianji, who was constantly overdrawing his lifespan, was at the end of his life. Almost there, almost there. At the last moment, Swan Tianhe used the last of his strength to push aside the dark clouds and peek into the secrets of the future. The apocalyptic scene of the 9 heavens falling and the sky beyond heaven appeared in front of the prophet's eyes. The scene of experts falling one after another, the black-clothed, black-haired demon standing in the 9 heavens, his killing intent endless, as if he wanted to destroy heaven and earth. "It's him." Before he could take another look, Tianji staggered and fell straight off the Tianji stage. "Master." The young man stepped forward and caught the falling Tianji, his handsome face full of anxiety. Swan Tianhe weakly said something in the young man's arms, then his vitality quickly dissipated and his hands hung limply by his side. At the same time, in the Xuanji palace, a jade pendant shattered with a bang. The Xuanji emperor suddenly got up from the dragon throne, took a step, and instantly disappeared. Boom! The 9 heavens were covered by dark clouds and thunder and lightning, as if lamenting the future of the human world. The void swirled and the emperor appeared. Looking at the old man in the young man's arms, his eyes darkened and his hands cracked. "What did Master say in the end?" The Xuanji emperor asked in a low voice. "The sky beyond heaven has appeared, the experts have fallen, the demon's body is in the sky, the end of the human world," the young man said in a low voice. Tianji's instructions before he died described the last scene he saw. However, at this moment, no one knew whether what he saw was real or not. "Bury him," the Xuanji emperor said in a low voice, then his figure flashed and disappeared. 2 days later, the Heaven's Legacy City's instructions were spread to every major sect in the Middle Continent, shocking the world. In the ancient temple at the foot of the mountain, in front of the demon-suppressing pagoda that was gradually being built, the old abbot walked forward and handed over the letter that the Emperor of 4 Stars had sent over. Tianji had informed him that there was a supreme martial artist in the ancient temple when he was still alive. The Emperor of 4 Stars did not disturb him all this time. Today, he sent a letter and for the first time, acknowledged the existence of the Buddha. Supreme Bodhi was silent after reading the contents of the letter. The Emperor of the Four Stars sect's intention was very clear. He wanted Yi Qingyu to help him slay the demons. However, he had doubts about the instructions given by the Tianji city. He knew very well that there were two devils from the eastern region. One of them had completely become a devil, and the other had killed so much that he could fall into the devil's path at any time. However, he still had a trace of hesitation when it came to these two people. It was hard to believe that a powerhouse who had once saved the world would actually become the scourge of the apocalypse. In Beiyu City, a chess piece was placed on the chessboard. Dark clouds rolled in the sky, and thunder rumbled continuously. The atmosphere was unusually oppressive. In the small courtyard, Zhao Jingluan sent someone to deliver the news that they were about to set off. Ning Chen looked at the green bird on the tree branch and suppressed the uneasiness in his heart. After hesitating for a moment, he did not send the letter to the butterfly in the end. Ling'er, come here for a moment. Time was of the essence and there was no time to waste. Ning Chen did not hesitate any longer. He called the little girl who was playing by herself and walked out of the courtyard. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. Not long after, with a creak, Bai Yunlian walked out and looked at the person in front of him without saying a word. Miss Bai, I'll have to trouble you again. Ning Chen rubbed the little girl's hair and said softly, I have something important to do and need to go out. If I'm not back by dawn tomorrow, please send Ling'er back to the sword-casting manor. Thank you very much. Is it very dangerous? Bai Yunlian frowned slightly and asked. It should be fine. Maybe I'm just thinking too much, Ning Chen replied with a smile. Be careful. Bai Yunlian took the little girl's hand and hesitated for a moment before saying two words that he had never said before. A look of surprise flashed across Ning Chen's eyes. Then, he nodded with a smile and turned to leave. Outside the northern guard city, one figure after another flew out and headed north. Within the highest pavilion, a Zhao family disciple came to deliver news. Zhao Qingyang's expression changed slightly and he immediately headed north. Grand Elder, where are you going? 200 miles outside the city, two figures walked out and blocked his path. One was azure-robed and the other was blue-robed. Both of their powerful auras were shocking. Zhao Tinkong, Zhao Jingluan. Seeing the two of them, Zhao Qingyang's expression sank. He immediately realized that something was wrong. I originally thought that it would take a few more days to get rid of you. I never thought that a scarlet refining devil would help me so much. Now that your life substitution talisman has been destroyed and Zhao Feixiao is no longer here, your path has come to an end, smiled Zhao Jingluan. So you've long since suspected me, said Zhao Qingyang. You were in too much of a rush and exposed too many openings. However, I still don't understand how you learned about the strange consciousness in Liusu's soul. The sect master and I have never mentioned this matter to anyone, said Zhao Jingluan indifferently. You want to know? Keep dreaming. Zhao Jingluan, even a vicious tiger won't eat its cubs. Your viciousness surpasses mine by 100 times, 1,000 times. Sect master, if you ask a tiger for its skin, you'll end up burning yourself sooner or later, said Zhao Qingyang. Trying to sow discord is a useless struggle. Since you don't want to speak, then hand over your life. A vast palm condensed. The Zhao family's Jingluan was the first to use his shocking cultivation base. His vigorous true qi soared in the darkness, and he stepped forward and slammed his palm forward. Zhao Qingyang's expression changed slightly. With a wave of his hand, the Yin Moon sword appeared, blocking the incoming palm. The two of them collided, causing the wilderness to explode. Boundless chaotic streams of energy surged. As the two of them retreated, Zhao Tinkong's body moved and he pressed his palm forward. Yin Moon sword art. Zhao Qingyang's feet spun, and his sword moved. A Yin Moon rose behind him. His sword moved the wind and clouds, meeting the incoming palm head-on. With a boom, Zhao Tinkong retreated 3 steps. His eyes were cold, and he once more raised his palm to seize Zhao Qingyang's soul. At the same time, Zhao Jingluan also raised his true qi to support the battle. In this peak battle, one sword shook two experts. Zhao Qingyang held the Yin Moon sword in his hand. His sword was swift and fierce, vowing to kill his way out. Sword and palm collided again and again. Blood constantly splattered. How could this trap that had been prepared for so long allow someone to escape? Whirlwind scattering clouds, red sword. Two experts working together were difficult to block. Zhao Qingyang's sword's Yin Moon sword flourished, and endless cold qi spread. A single slash of his sword sealed everything within 100 miles. Useless move. Zhao Jingluan snorted coldly. His figure flashed, and he suddenly split into two. He dodged the sword and then condensed into one. In the blink of an eye, he arrived behind Zhao Qingyang and slammed out a palm. The restraining move that he had cultivated for many years finally came in handy today. This life-taking palm mercilessly cut off the soul. With a bang, blood splattered everywhere. Zhao Qingyang staggered and vomited a mouthful of blood. His aura rapidly surged. First Elder, don't forget this life's lesson on the road to the Yellow Springs. Don't be a member of the Zhao family in your next life. As he spoke, Zhao Tinkong's body trembled, and his palm struck Zhao Qingyang's chest once more. With a muffled groan, Zhao Qingyang's white figure flew back. Blood flowed from his body, dyeing his white robes red. Having lost his divine talisman, the head of the venerated pavilion was at the end of his road. Zhao Qingyang's sword stabbed into the ground. It was a miserable scene. His white robes were dyed red, and his blood constantly flowed, creating ravines on the ground below him. Ugh! Zhao Qingyang, who had lost all his vitality and strength, struggled to get up. Suddenly, he did something shocking. Even if I die, I will drag you all to hell with me. With a palm strike on his dantian, his qi collapsed. Endless true yuan surged out and flowed through his meridians. Zhao Qingyang, who had overdrawn his vitality, raised his sword to the sky. An incomparably dazzling moon slowly rose. Under the moonlight, black ice crystals rapidly condensed, reaching hundreds of miles away. Be careful. Seeing that his opponent was going all out, Zhao Tinkong reminded him. Immediately, he raised his true yuan to the limit and gathered the spiritual qi from all directions, condensing his strongest move. In an instant, the sky was filled with thunder. Bolts of lightning descended from the sky, increasing the power of his move. On the other side, Zhao Jingluan's mouth curved into an indescribable arc. He took half a step back without leaving a trace. Raising his true yuan again, he suddenly changed the direction of his palm. Ugh! An unbelievable palm strike pierced through Zhao Qingyang's heart. At the same time, the Yin Moon sword qi pierced through his throat. You! Zhao Tinkong turned his head with difficulty and looked at the azure-clothed man behind him. His eyes were filled with disbelief. That was still a sincere smile, warm and gentle. The person he trusted the most in his life seemed so unfamiliar at this moment. Sect Master, First Elder, you've all been of use. With Liusu's help, the Zhao family will once more reign supreme in my hands and regain its former glory, said Zhao Jingluan. Zhao Tinkong, this is the person you trusted the most. How lamentable. I'll be waiting for you on the road to the Yellow Springs. Zhao Qingyang staggered and crazily laughed. His body slowly collapsed, smashing into the dust. As expected, the person you trust the most is the most untrustworthy. Ha! A sorrowful laugh came from the pain of being betrayed by someone he trusted. In the next moment, golden light blossomed from Zhao Tinkong's mouth. The life substitution talisman had appeared once more. Your life can't be returned. Zhao Jingluan's body flickered, and he arrived in front of Zhao Qingyang. His palm turned into a claw and pierced into Zhao Qingyang's heart. Zhao Qingyang's powerless body smashed into the ground. His final gaze was filled with sorrow and tears. His eyes slowly closed. The lesson of this life had been deeply painful. If there was a next life, would he still want to be a member of the Zhao family? Dark clouds surged, blocking out all light. The battle had ended in a wasteland riddled with holes. The victor proudly stood there, blood constantly dripping from the life substitution talisman in his right hand. The Zhao family's Jingluan was full of wisdom, but he had schemed against everyone. Zhao Jingluan, you deserve to die 10,000 times for your crimes. Just at this moment, an infuriated shout rang out. A black arrow filled with fury shot over. The Yi Moon bow was drawn, and the wind and clouds changed. Zhao Jingluan's expression shook. Vast vital energy converged and blocked the terrifying arrow light descending from the sky. With a loud bang, Qin Yi retreated a few steps. Blood dripped from his right arm, dyeing the ground red. Zhao Yulan, the Yi Moon bow. How? When Zhao Jingluan saw the woman in front of him and the heavenly bow that should have been lost, his expression changed again and again. He did not understand what went wrong. Chapter 498. Outside of the northern guard city, Yulan had arrived in fury. Her body was filled with killing intent, and the dark moon blossomed with dazzling light. One black arrow after another pierced through the air and arrived directly in front of Zhao Jingluan. Boom! With a loud rumble, Zhao Jingluan retreated a few steps. Then, he took a step forward and swiftly shot forward. His palm energy converged into a torrential wave as he struck out with a bang. Zhao Yulan gracefully stepped out of the way, dodging the palm strike. Her heavenly bow's cold chi soared into the sky, piercing through the black clouds. Another black arrow appeared. With a boom, the arrow pierced through the air, cutting through the horizon. Its destructive power caused heaven and earth to tremble. A peak battle between two geniuses. Arrows and palms pierced through the 9 heavens, shocking the world. An hour before the battle began, a black-robed figure appeared in the Zhao family's dark moon pagoda. He instantly arrived in front of the heavily injured Zhao Yulan. You! Zhao Yulan was just about to resist when a sword was pointed at her throat. She didn't dare to move. If you don't want to die, then don't resist. Phoenix flames surged into her body, burning away the remnants of her fiendish aura. A vast amount of phoenix origin energy flowed into her body, temporarily suppressing her injuries. Dark Moon Bow, I'll return it to you. The black-robed figure waved his hand, and an object wrapped in black cloth flew out and landed in her hand. Zhao Yulan opened the black cloth, revealing the dark moon bow that had been stolen from her a few days ago. Its familiar aura was bone-chilling. Why? Asked Zhao Yulan. If I were you, I wouldn't ask why. I've already returned the dark moon bow to you. Zhao Qingyang is currently on his way to the Red Maple Forest. Whether or not you can save his life will depend on your own good fortune. As soon as he finished speaking, the black-robed figure moved his feet and instantly disappeared. Grand Elder. Zhao Yulan's expression changed. Her figure flickered as she left the Zhao family and headed north. Up in the sky, a furious and irrepressible arrow pierced through the heavens. Wherever it passed, a terrifying hole was ripped open in the air. A sinister black chi wildly whistled through the air. The arrow was too fast to dodge. Zhao Jingluan waved his hand, gathering the energy of heaven and earth. A furious torrent of energy slammed into the black arrow. When he saw blood, he retreated several steps. In the aftermath of the shockwave, his green robe disappeared. He stepped through the air and instantly arrived in front of Yulan in the void. He sent out a palm strike and raging waves attacked the sky. Zhao Yulan gathered her energy and sent out a palm strike. Blood spurted out and Yulan was sent flying. The blood did not stop flowing. Yu drew her bow and 3 arrows shot out, chasing after the stars and moon. Heaven and earth are one game, and the falling stars are the chess pieces. Zhao Jingluan waved his hand and pointed at the stars. The world turned into a chessboard, and the stars turned into chess pieces that fell into the overall situation of the world. In the pinnacle of the match, the child of the stars met the dark moon arrow head-on. 3 arrows filled the sky, and the stars shattered. With a huge explosion, the world tilted and blood splashed. Zhao Jingluan retreated several more steps. His fury reached the tip of his brow as he condensed the power of wind and clouds in his hands. His shocking cultivation instantly erupted. The chaotic aura formed a huge whirlpool around Zhao Jingluan. Zhao Jingluan displayed his shocking martial arts foundation for the first time. His aura that was close to that of a human sovereign soared into the sky and shook the world. 7 stars fall to earth, annihilation of the universe. This was a shocking move. 7 enormous stars appeared in the sky above Zhao Jingluan. They condensed into a myriad of things that seemed illusory yet real. Zhao Yulan's slender hand drew across the bowstring of the dark moon arrow. Blood flowed out and dyed the heavenly bow red. A terrifying aura quickly awakened. Boundless blood light enveloped Yulan's body. In the next moment, a blood-colored arrow appeared. It absorbed the cold energy of the world and transformed into an arrow that pierced through the sky. The arrow that appeared in the sky had a bright red moon on it. It was as if the moon had descended from the heavens, causing the world to tremble. Within the whirlpool of wind and clouds, the 2 extremes collided. The bright moon lost its color, and a brilliant light spread out endlessly, destroying everything in its path. Everything collapsed and sand surged like a wave. Ugh! Zhao Jingluan was sent flying several meters away by the shock waves. Blood dripped from the corner of her mouth. She had been seriously injured. On the other side, a beautiful figure was dyed red as she was sent flying. Blood sprinkled across the sky. The Zhao family's Yulan, who had yet to recover from her injuries, was once again injured. New injuries and old injuries erupted at the same time. She staggered as blood splashed across the sand. To be able to injure me like this, Zhao Yulan, I commend you. However, I will be taking your life. As he spoke, Zhao Jingluan's palm energy once more arrived. A life-taking palm strike flashed past. Let's enter seamless together. Zhao Yulan didn't even try to dodge. Instead, she stepped on the bowstring, her body turning into an arrow. In an instant, her orchid blossomed, and a sky full of purple crystals quietly floated down. That year, the Grand Elder had found the pride of the Zhao family, Empty Valley Yulan, in front of the highest pavilion. Yulan, are you willing to enter the highest pavilion? I'm not willing. Yulan refused. I know you've always thought that I opposed the sect master because I was eyeing the position of sect master. But do you know what Zhao Tinkong and Zhao Jingluan did? They forcefully implanted the soul energy of several of the Zhao family's ancestors into Zhao Yosu's soul. That is a taboo. Even a vicious tiger will not devour its cubs. The Zhao family will sooner or later be consigned to eternal damnation in their hands. Come to the highest pavilion. Only by working together can we stop these 2 devils, advised Zhao Qingyang. Yulan's expression sank. How do I know you're not just making up excuses for your ambitions? You can use your own eyes to see for yourself. You should know that Zhao Yosu's physique can only be considered not bad. However, a few days ago, I accidentally discovered that her physique is gradually approaching perfection, without any flaws. In this world, there is no heavenly treasure that can change a person to such a degree. The only exception is a human sovereign, continued Zhao Qingyang. So you're saying that Zhao Yosu is already a human sovereign, asked Yulan. It's not complete. Right now, it's just her cultivation realm, but her physical body hasn't reached the required level. However, one day, once the strange consciousness within her three souls completely awakens, her physique will reach perfection. At that time, Zhao Liusu will truly become a human sovereign who only has strength, but has completely lost her sense of self, said Zhao Qingyang gravely. How do you know? Asked Yulan. Before I became the Grand Elder of the Grand Pavilion and before Zhao Tinkong became the sect master, I accidentally entered the Zhao family's ancestral shrine. From the 4 stone tablets below the altar, I saw this forbidden technique. At that time, I only felt that it was too shocking and difficult to realize, so I didn't take it to heart. It was only when I discovered Zhao Liusu's abnormality that I thought of this matter again, explained Zhao Qingyang. Don't let me find out that you're lying to me. Otherwise, I'll make you pay an unbearable price. Yulan snorted and turned to leave. From that day onwards, the Zhao family's Yulan had entered the Grand Pavilion, and for the next 10 years, she had used her own eyes to observe the Zhao family's bottomless depths, to see the truth that was difficult to see. 10 years later, when the truth was placed in front of her, the Zhao family's Yulan's fury soared into the sky. The Yin moon gathered the 9 heavens Yin qi, and her body transformed into an arrow. The moment the Yulan flower bloomed, the arrow shot out, causing the world to dim. At the same time, her palm energy also arrived. The moment the arrow and palm collided, the ground within dozens of miles caved in. Even Beiyu City, which was 300 miles away, could clearly feel the tremors. The commoners were terrified. Ugh! A waterfall of blood sprayed into the sky. On the collapsed ground, 2 figures vomited blood and retreated a dozen steps at the same time. The Zhao family's Yulan was half kneeling on the ground, her body covered in blood. Blood continuously dripped from her body, dyeing her purple dress red. The Yulan flower that had bloomed in the cold wind had completely bloomed. It was so beautiful that it was dazzling. For the sake of protecting the Zhao family, she had endured patiently. No matter what the outside world said, no matter what the Zhao family said, she still followed her own method to protect the family that she had sacrificed her entire life for. The Grand Elder's scheme, Zhao Tinkong's and Zhao Jingluan's ambitions, none of it was seen by others. However, Zhao Yulan, who had been calmly watching from the side, had silently seen it all. Perhaps in this world, the Zhao family's Yulan was the one who saw it the clearest. Rip! Under the rumbling of the night sky, the sound of clothes tearing apart was ear-piercing. Amidst the raging sandstorm, a waterfall of blood sprayed out from Zhao Jingluan's chest. The final arrow had pierced through his heart, forcibly destroying his martial bones. Ugh! Blood continued to pour out of Zhao Jingluan's mouth. His expression was sinister as he looked at the woman in front of him. Zhao Yulan, you've made me have a whole new level of respect for you. However, in the end, you still won't be able to kill me. As he spoke, golden light flickered. The substitution talisman appeared in the world. Its brilliant brilliance illuminated the world, as well as the sinful night. Substitution samsara. The sinner was about to take a step back from the brink of death. However, at this moment, a white robe flashed through the night. In an instant, a cold sword pierced through the sky. The golden light that filled the sky instantly turned sluggish. Zhao Jingluan, you won't be able to return to the heavens. The phoenix opened its mouth and swallowed the substitution talisman, completely severing the connection between the two. Then it disappeared into the body of a life-knowing cultivator. It's you. The familiar face in front of him now had a completely different coldness. Zhao Jingluan's sinister face flashed with shock. He had never imagined that in the end, this would be the place where his mistake had occurred. Ning Chen glanced at the man whose martial bones had been destroyed and whose heart had been heavily injured. He didn't finish off the final blow. Instead, he turned and walked toward Zhao Yulan. No matter what, this man was still Liusu's father. Even if he deserved to die, he didn't deserve to die by Ning Chen's hand. So, this was all part of your plan. Seeing the crimson drill sword in Ning Chen's hand, Zhao Yulan instantly understood everything. She smiled miserably and coughed up another mouthful of blood. How many people could I have schemed against? Said Ning Chen calmly. He stepped forward, turned over his hand, and slowly sent qi into the woman's body. It's useless. Zhao Yulan pushed Ning Chen's hand away, her expression exhausted. Perhaps he was right. If it weren't for the greed of the human heart, then this entire situation would have been completely meaningless. No matter what, she had to thank him for personally wiping away the filth of the Zhao clan. Father. Uncle's sect leader. Just as the dust was about to settle, a group of figures appeared off in the distance. Their leader was an old man. Zhao Yosu saw the unbelievable scene in front of her, and her mind trembled. Ning Chen turned his head, and his expression changed slightly. Just as he was about to step forward, an indescribably terrifying pressure suddenly pressed down on him. It was as if the 9 heavens were falling down. It was so heavy that everyone's expression changed. However, in the void above, Zhao Yosu, who had lost control of her mind, tears quietly slid down her cheeks. In the next moment, a mournful cry resounded for hundreds of miles. The wind and clouds in the 9 heavens changed. Her black hair danced wildly in the sky, and a terrifying pressure descended, destroying the world. All of you deserve to die. She lost control of her mind, and the seal merged. In the air, the mortal sovereign opened her eyes, and a terrifying killing intent surged out. Chapter 499. The Supreme Being of the mortal realm had awakened. Dark clouds rolled and lightning flashed continuously, illuminating the faces of everyone present. Her hair wildly danced in the wind, and her aura was so terrifying that it made people's hearts tremble. It far surpassed esteemed Qingbai's. The heavens descended, and lightning fell one after another. Heaven and earth grieved. Boom! A 3-meter thick bolt of lightning fell from the sky. The heavenly Daos had sensed it, and it sent down world-cleansing heavenly lightning, wanting to destroy this man-made forbidden existence. The blazing white lightning was exceptionally dazzling, and it contained a destructive force. Under the lightning, the woman remained as unmoving as a mountain. She raised a slender hand to block the world-cleansing heavenly lightning. The forbidden existence was difficult to remove. Thunderclouds once more roiled, and thousands of bolts of lightning fell at the same time. Scram! The woman's bloodshot eyes looked up at the sky. Her words were like a law, and the lightning instantly froze. The black clouds in the sky scattered, and the lightning collapsed. The extremely powerful human supreme beings, even the heavens couldn't stop them, their cries trembling. Run! Seeing that a chosen had appeared, the situation was irreversible. Zhao Yulan endured her heavy injuries and shouted. Ning Chen recovered his wits and brought the heavily injured Yulan away. I already said that all of you will die. The woman took a step forward, and space twisted beneath her feet. In an instant, she appeared in front of the two of them. Her palm pressed down, and space collapsed. An extremely terrifying existence was difficult to contend against. The Yama King reappeared in Ning Chen's left hand. His 2 swords condensed into a pair of yang moves. Divine suns appeared in the human world to block the chosen's palm. Zhao Yulan also condensed her remaining true yuan. Moon Bao was drawn, and moonlight shone brightly. The sun and moon moved side by side, condensing into a move that could kill gods and slay Buddhas. Together, they resisted the forbidden existence. The chosen's palm fell, and the sun and moon instantly collapsed. The two of them were sent flying, their blood filling the sky. The Central Plains and the Eastern region's 2 peak heavenly geniuses were unable to block a single attack. What a terrifying existence! 9 suns, space severing. Seeing that Yulan was already heavily injured, Ning Chen endured his injuries and used his heavenly book's move. 9 suns revolved, cutting through the void. However, Just as the combined technique was about to arrive, the woman raised her hand, and the void twisted, instantly using the parallel engulfing flow technique. In the next moment, the mortal sovereign's palm struck out again. The terrifying might was as if the 9 heavens were pouring down. It was abnormally terrifying. Ning Chen took a step forward, and the king of hell condensed his phoenix essence again. The murderous aura of the crimson drill sword swept out violently, and the power of the 2 swords blocked the heavenly fall. With a loud bang, blood splashed into the sand. Ning Chen was sent flying backwards. Behind him, Yulan was also sent flying hundreds of feet away, stumbling and vomiting blood. Go! Ning Chen leaped into the air and borrowed the momentum to retreat again. He took Yulan with him and quickly left. Hurry up and leave. If you take me with you, no one will be able to leave. I'm already without a doctor. Leaving or not, there's no difference. Even as she spoke, Zhao Yulan flipped her palm and knocked him out of the battle. Then, she took advantage of the momentum to send him out of the battle. After finishing her last task, Yulan turned around and activated Yin and Yang to their limits. Amidst the bloody mist that surged into the heavens, the heavenly bow reflected the moon. A scarlet arrow radiance slowly condensed, condensing the moonlight's Yin energy and rising endlessly. Looking back on her life's perseverance, the Zhao family's Yulan no longer had any regrets. Her final arrow had surpassed her own limits and rapidly climbed, reaching the supreme realm of perfection. Tell me your name. Within the bloody mist, the orchid bloomed, and a clear voice rang out. Ning Chen. Outside the battle, Ning Chen couldn't help but turn his head and transmit his voice. Heh, so it's you. I'll remember it. Goodbye, Grand Xia Jiming Marquis. After the arrow shot out, the orchid quietly withered after blooming to the extreme. In the horizon, a blood-red brilliance cut through the void and arrived in front of the mortal sovereign. The mortal sovereign raised her hand to block the arrow. The endless sharpness of the arrow rapidly revolved, breaking through the mortal sovereign's true essence and entering her body. Pop! A drop of blood dripped from the corner of the woman's mouth onto the ground. This was the first time she had seen blood since the battle began. On the ground, the gradually withered orchid had already reached the end of its life. A pair of beautiful eyes tiredly looked into the distance. This life had been worth it. Bring her back to the Yin Soul prison. Everyone else, continue chasing, said the woman coldly. Yes. Outside the battle, the Zhao family's experts suppressed their shock and respectfully accepted the order. Under the night sky, streak after streak of light flashed past, chasing in the southwest direction at high speed. Within a secluded residence in the northern imperial city, Bai Yunlian stood quietly. Looking at the eastern sky, she couldn't help but frown. He still hadn't returned. Had something really happened? After waiting for a quarter of an hour, the sky was already bright. The person who should have returned still hadn't returned. Bai Yunlian didn't wait any longer and walked into her room. He still hadn't returned. According to her promise, it was time for her to send Yin back. Half a day later, in the sword-forging villa, the space rippled, and a beautiful figure in a blue and white dress walked out. She no longer concealed her aura, and a powerful pressure descended from the sky, causing everyone in the villa to feel their chests tighten. Human sovereign. Within a study filled with ancient texts, the sword-forging head was startled. He quickly turned his wheelchair and rushed out. Inside the villa, everyone was on guard. In front of them, an exceptionally beautiful woman stood quietly. Beside her, a cute little girl stood there, causing everyone who saw them to be shocked. Yin. A beautiful woman excitedly ran forward and hugged the little girl tightly, crying bitterly. Tears streamed down Yin's face as she began to sob. In the end, she was just a 7-year-old girl. After experiencing such a life and death situation, how could she remain calm? Many thanks for saving Yin, said the sword-forging head. I didn't save her. You don't need to thank me. Furthermore, Her's foundation has already been cleansed by her phoenix blood. She has already paid back that sword attack. After saying that, Bai Yunlian turned and left, disappearing in an instant. The sword-forging head was startled. He looked at the little girl in the woman's embrace. At this moment, his expression was extremely complicated. In just one day, the Central Plains had undergone a huge change. The Zhao family once more reigned supreme. A terrifying sovereign who stood at the apex of the human world had appeared, sweeping away all resistance and forcefully unifying the Zhao family's power. Another day later, the Zhao family's devil-slaying order was issued. No one dared to go against it. Practically all the large sects had sent out Xiantian experts to discuss the matter of slaying the devils. What was different was that the sword-forging manor, which had always been active in slaying the devils, chose to remain silent this time. They didn't respond at all. However, even so, the trend of slaying the devils was irreversible. Within Heavenly Fate City, Tian Jizi's disciples worked together to use divination arts to lock onto the traces of the devils. They used secret arts to spread to the various sects, assisting them in slaying the devils. In the boundless wilderness, the red clothes were stained with blood. The swords opened up a path for the devils. Waves after waves of pursuers seemed to always know where they were and couldn't avoid them. Even if they changed their appearances, it was useless. Forced to a dead end, they couldn't take it anymore. In the hands of the knowing destiny state, the King of Hell opened up a path to the underworld. In half a day, they had killed all the pursuers of the 3,000 large sections. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The extremely angry sects finally exploded with their strongest anger. They worked together to send out thousands of Xiantian experts. 9 half-supremacies walked out together to slay the devils. Under the setting sun, the wilderness was dyed red. No one knew how many people's blood had stained Qi Lian's sword. The monstrous killing intent soared into the sky. It could be seen clearly from thousands of miles away. The knowing destiny state was already injured. After being besieged repeatedly, his body was exhausted day by day. The blue bird asked for his whereabouts. The anxious butterfly kept asking for his whereabouts. However, no one responded. Among all the sects in the world, only the academy didn't receive guidance from the Tianji city. This was an order from the human supremacy of the Zhao family. The Tianji city didn't dare to disobey. Under the cold moon, the knowing destiny state, who had broken through many pursuers, closed his eyes and sat on a dead tree. He listened to the blue bird's voice on his shoulder. He didn't answer from beginning to end. As long as she was safe, it was enough. Aren't you going to run anymore? The void stirred. One figure after another appeared. The 4 half-supremacies chased after him again. Behind them, Xiantian experts, 5th tribulation experts, and 3 disasters experts came. Their soldiers surged like waves in the sky. Endless auras joined together and gathered the power of the world. They didn't give the devils any chance to escape. On the dead tree, the knowing destiny state, who had temporarily adjusted his breath and suppressed his injuries, stood up. He looked at the allied forces of the various sects calmly. His black hair had been stained with frost. The terrifying killing intent surged. With the blood under the sword, it could no longer be suppressed. The Taoist body had lived for 100 years, while the devil body had lived for 1,000 years. As the killing continued, the powerful devil showed signs of suppressing the phoenix body again. The road of Avicii was long. Once one stepped on it, it would be difficult to turn back. In the Zhao family's Soul prison. In the prison, a sad and beautiful figure was tied to the wall. Yulan, who was at the end of her life, couldn't resist the erosion of the cold air in the Soul prison for days. She finally reached the end of her life. Cough, cough. In the silent prison, coughs sounded one after another. Drops of blood flowed from the corner of Yolan's mouth and fell on the ground that had been dyed brown by blood. Her once beautiful eyes gradually lost their former brilliance. However, there was a trace of calmness in them that hadn't been there before. At this moment, the door of the prison opened. A girl in purple walked in. Her face was familiar, but it was completely cold. Yulan raised her head and looked at the girl in front of her. She smiled tiredly and said weakly, "Liusu, are you here to send me off?" "I'm here to see how miserable your end will be," the girl said coldly. "Is it important?" Yulan coughed out another mouthful of blood. Drops of blood fell on the ground in front of her. "It's important. Also, there's no need to rush on the road to the Yellow Springs. That man should be accompanying you soon," said Zhao Liusu coldly. "Liusu, you can't kill him. The time limit was up." Yolan's consciousness was in a daze. She weakly replied, then coughed again. Outside the Yin Seoul prison, the sun gradually rose. The first rays of the morning sun shone through the cracks in the prison's window. At this moment it was unexpectedly warm. "It's daybreak." Yulan raised her head and smiled tiredly. After waiting for so long, it had finally come. "I hope you will be safe and happy from now on." Yulan looked at the girl in front of her for the last time. There was no hatred or resentment in her eyes. She had just opened her heavenly eye to observe the world of mortals. Chapter 500. In the wilderness of the buried gods, another killing scene unfolded. The black and white hair fluttered in the wind as Qi Lian and Yama's twin swords opened the path to hell. The allied forces of various sects surrounded them heavily, sealing off all escape routes. Two half-venerables were in charge of the formation, while the other two half-venerables stepped forward, holding their weapons and preparing for battle. Kill! With a single command, the saber and halberd beheaded the demons. The sharp killing light chased after their souls and took their lives. With a loud clang, the four weapons collided with each other. The aftermath of the collision shook the earth. The knowing destiny dual swords fought against the two venerables. The heavenly son of swordsmanship had once again reached his peak. Taking a step, turning his body, swinging his sword, simple yet flawless sword moves were like flowing clouds. Sword after sword, he blocked the two venerables' fierce attacks. Rip! The sound of clothes tearing could be heard. A half-venerable's arm turned red for the first time. He took half a step back and his face darkened. In the battle, Hong Yi's expression was ice-cold. Her entire body was filled with demonic killing intent. Every move she made was the result of everything she had learned in her life. More than 10 years ago, he learned the way of the sword from the sword consecrator. After that, he carried the sword for the legend of the Grand Xia dynasty and saw the sword on the sword. After that, in Desolation City, Mu Bai taught him the way of the sword. Sword style, sky severing. The Yama king swung his sword, slicing through the air. 100-meter-long gust of wind tore through the void, and even the path to the Yellow Springs. Fresh blood spurted out, and severed limbs fell everywhere. The Grim Reaper took his life, and the sword opened the Yellow Springs. Seeing that the situation was unfavorable for them, a half-venerable who was in charge of the formation waved his hand and held his spear. A whirlwind broke through the air and entered the battle once again. With a loud bang, the sword and spear collided. Cold light scattered in all directions. Hong Yi's sword power rotated. One sword retracted, and the other advanced. In a flash, the attack and defense had been switched. The King of Hell had seized his life. Clang! The blade flashed and blocked the sword. Then, the halberd came from behind Hong Yi. They attacked in unison and did not give him any chance to breathe. Sword style, remnant red. Danger struck. In knowing destiny's hand, the King of Hell's blade turned in an instant. Holding the sword with a backhand grip, he took a step forward and his shadow scattered. In an instant, the sword flashed and the red sword fell. The sword and halberd clashed. Immediately after, a muffled groan sounded. One sword attacked, the other defended. Qi Lian's god-shaking halberd pierced through the chest of Yama. The sword pierced an inch into his body, and the halberd in the demigod's hand released a surge of true yuan. The demigod was pushed back, and he took 2 steps back. Then, he operated his martial arts to suppress the injury on his chest. Behind him, the saber light and spear shadows arrived again in the blink of an eye. They were swift and fierce and did not stop for even a moment. Ji Ming turned sideways and swung his sword to ward off the spear shadow. Then, the tip of his sword collided with the saber radiance. The aftershock of the saber and the sword rolled up thousands of sand waves. There were layers upon layers of murderous traps, and there was no way to survive. The sword in the trap was handsome and proud. Knowing destiny had walked out of corpses and bones. Even in the divine tribulation, it had never retreated half a step. Tens of thousands of miles away, in Tianji City, human supremes appeared one after another. They stood at the top of the sky and looked towards the southwest of the central region. Their eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. To have such attainments in the sword at such a young age was truly shocking. The great Xia Jiming Marquis lived up to his name. Unfortunately, his foundation was too far from what the legend said. Otherwise, even if the 9 half-venerables came together, they would not be able to defeat him. The eastern region's Jiming Marquis has come to the central region. We didn't even know about it. Sorry for not going out to meet you, said a Supremes with a half-smile. It's not too late to welcome him now. All the sects under the heavens have moved because of him. This kind of extravagance is enough. While speaking, a purple-clothed young lady walked over. Even though she looked young, her terrifying aura actually faintly suppressed every single supreme being present. It was truly shocking. As the saying goes, nothing is more poisonous than a woman's heart. It's true. Zhao Yosu, I heard that the Jiming Marquis saved your life. To repay him like this is really impressive, said the Supremes who spoke first. Tu Li Zun, if you think you've lived too long, I don't mind sending you on your way, said the girl coldly. Ha! Tu Li Zun smiled faintly and did not say anything else. Although this person's attainments in the sword are terrifying, his foundation is too far from what the legends say. It's hard to reverse the situation, said another Supremes. It's hard to send a deity off. If he doesn't pay a price, how can he succeed? If his foundation was still there, we would be the ones to act now, said the fourth Supremes. A hero at the end of his road. What a pity. The first Supremes sighed softly. Tianji City's prophecies have never been wrong. This person's killing intent is already irreversible. Instead of watching him completely enter the demonic path and wreak havoc in the world, it's better to send him on his way before that day comes, said the fourth Supremes calmly. Tens of thousands of miles away, the sound of swords clashing became more and more ear-piercing. The battle had reached its climax. Knowing destiny fought against 3 venerables with 2 swords. Above the 9 heavens, endless sounds of chains were heard. The pinnacle ultimate martial art resonated with the heavenly law. Drops of sweat hadn't even dripped down when they were evaporated by phoenix flames. The 9 suns on the sword spun into the sky and forced back 100 people who were surrounding it. Sword force, heavenly fall. The 9 suns turned into a sword. The sword form and the heavenly book combined together fell from the sky. The sword sun descended and 1,000 feet of land suddenly collapsed. Amidst the miserable cries, the bodies of hundreds of cultivators from various sects exploded. Blood and bones scattered all over the sky, dyeing the wilderness red. The 3 venerables blocked the sword and retreated several steps. Their blood did not stop flowing. They took a step back and the halberd descended once again. Knowing destiny brandished his sword to shake off the 2 weapons. Borrowing the force, he turned around and blocked the saber again. At the same time, in the ancient temple at the foot of the mountain, in front of the demon-subduing pagoda, Supreme Bodhi, who had never left the ancient temple, was quietly watching the battle in the distance. His usually calm eyes had become abnormally complicated at this moment. It was difficult to understand the Buddha's heart. Should the sinner who had no choice but to become a devil in order to save the world be punished? In the Heaven's Fate City, 7 white-clothed youths were studying the Heaven's Fate together. Suddenly, their expressions froze. One of them immediately said, "A sovereign is heading towards the God Burial Wilderness. His goal is unknown." "Another paragon has left, and he's also heading towards the Wilderness of Gods," said the second youth. "Humph, do you think it's that easy to interfere?" The purple-clothed girl took a step forward and disappeared instantly. "This sovereign also wants to join in the fun." Tu Li revealed a playful expression. His figure flashed as he followed after her. In the God Burial Wilderness, who knew how many tens of thousands of li away, the paragons started fighting. For the sake of the battle in the God Burial Wilderness, the Xiantian full-circle sovereigns who had always avoided fighting also started the most intense battle. Pieces of the void collapsed, and thousands of li of land collapsed. The terrifying heavens might frighten even gods and ghosts. Under the momentum of the world devil-slaying war, even the paragons were powerless. They were blocked by other paragons and couldn't advance. Today, no one can save him. The Zhao clan's paragon turned his hand into clouds and opened the sky. He blocked the path of the paragons. Every move caused the world to tremble. In the God Burial Wilderness, the battle became more and more intense. 1,000 li away, the remaining 5 paragons and a portion of the sex forces were rushing towards the God Burial Wilderness. With the help of the Heaven's Fate City, the traces of the devil body were like candlelight in the dark night, difficult to hide. The killing array was heavy, and countless souls had died under the sword. In the killing array, the black hair and white frost that moved along with the sword increased. The sword opened the gate of life, and the sword killed the souls. In the center of the killing array, the 3 paragons unleashed their full strength. Their auras soared, and their divine weapons were used to slay the devil body. After a long battle, the 2 swords suppressed the 3 paragons. The shocking sword techniques made the battle of the devil-slaying war even more difficult. Morning sun shines in the east. The king of hell shines in the sun, and the heavenly books technique appeared again. Seeing this, the 3 paragons gathered their energy and blocked the shocking technique. With a shocking explosion, the world shook. When the 3 paragons retreated, the leader of the 4 paragons, who hadn't moved until now, finally moved. A strange snake-shaped sword swept past, breaking through the sky. When the sword met the sword, it shook violently. Ning Chen didn't have time to react, and the corner of his mouth was dyed red. Broken Mountain. One sword retreated, and the other sword advanced. Scarlet Lotus condensed its fiendish energy, and with one sword, it slashed down. Scarlet Lotus Demon, I commend you for being able to endure until now. Unfortunately, your path has come to an end. The leader of the 4 paragons gathered his energy and blocked Scarlet Lotus Demon's attack. In the midst of the chaotic sandstorm, several sword marks appeared on his clothes. Knowing destiny didn't say anything, and with a pair of cold eyes, he slashed down one sword after another. He didn't give up for even a moment. Before saving the ghost girl, no one could take his life. He had to live on, and he had to live on at all costs. 9 Suns, Burial of Life. At this moment, a terrifying fiendish energy soared into the sky. The 2 swords met, and the 9 suns gathered the evil energy of the world, turning into 9 black suns, and loudly fell down. It was a scene of doomsday, and the world within 100 miles was being destroyed. Sand was flying everywhere, and the earth was moving up and down like a tsunami. Countless experts couldn't withstand this terrifying evil energy, and with a bang, their bodies exploded. The 4 paragons blocked the attack, but all of them vomited blood. The evil energy entered their bodies, and their true essence became chaotic. When an opportunity appeared, knowing Destiny's 2 swords moved again, and with one sword slashing through the sky, his body turned into a phoenix image, and quickly flew away. Do you think you can escape? At this moment, the other 5 paragons finally arrived. The leader condensed his energy into his palm, and with a bang, he slapped at the phoenix image. Suddenly, a green arrow pierced through the sky, and blocked the paragon's attack. In that short moment, the phoenix spread its wings and disappeared into the distance. The Zhao family's people. The 9 paragons were furious. How could the Zhao family's people interfere at such a crucial moment? Traitor, it's you again. Tens of thousands of miles away, the purple-clothed girl flipped her palm to block the paragon's attack. Then she looked toward the southwest, and anger flashed through her eyes. Seeing the phoenix image leave, the paragons fighting Zhao Yosu also quickly retreated. 700 miles away from the god burial wilderness, the phoenix image appeared, and as soon as it landed, it staggered and vomited a mouthful of blood. Many thanks, said Ning Chen tiredly as he glanced at the man behind him. It's been a long time since we last met, but your ability to cause trouble still hasn't decreased. Luo Xingchen looked at the youth in front of him and sighed. It's just that I can't help it. Ning Chen replied, and then reminded him, you should quickly leave. My tracks have already been locked down, and it'll be difficult for me to escape in a short period of time. If a paragons personally attack us, none of us will be able to leave. I understand. I'll go hide in the Western Buddha's homeland for a while. You should also think of a way to leave the Central Plains as soon as possible. Luo Xingchen helplessly said. He had originally come back to cause trouble for the Zhao family, but now that he had helped knowing Destiny's arrow, he had no choice but to run. Yes, we'll meet again someday, said Ning Chen. We'll meet again someday. Luo Xingchen sighed softly. Without further delay, his figure flashed, and he headed west. Old friends had met again in less than a quarter of an hour, and now they had to part again. The experts who had risked their lives for the human world in the past actually had such a difficult road ahead. Chapter 501. Xing Chen left and went to West Buddha to seek refuge. Ji Ming also went west, but he chose the furthest direction from Luo Xing and went southwest. Hundreds of miles away, the 9 half-venerables split into 3 groups to block them. One group chased after them while the other 2 surrounded them. Before the world demon slaying situation was completed, they couldn't afford to make any mistakes. Ji Ming went west quickly. However, Zhongzhou was too big and the 3 groups kept chasing after them. The road ahead was getting more and more difficult. In Tianji City, the 7 young men in white used the sky-reaching technique to predict the whereabouts of the demons. They were doing their best to help in the demon-slaying situation. At the same time, the human supremes were watching from afar to see what would happen to Ji Ming Marquis. The way of heaven was vast. Slaying the demons might be following the will of heaven. However, Ji Ming Marquis had saved the world. No one knew if it was a good thing to attack him. Therefore, they didn't want to take the risk unless they had no other choice. In the southwest of Zhongzhou, time flew. The world demon-slaying situation went from day to night and from night to moon. No one dared to be careless in the battle of life and death. Ji Ming went west faster and faster. He knew that as long as he left Zhongzhou, the world demon-slaying situation would be over. The phoenix spread its wings and sped up. If he could pass the situation, he would have a bright future. If he couldn't, the phoenix would break its wings and be doomed. The 3 groups surrounded the phoenix day and night. When the moon was in the middle of the night, one group met the phoenix. After a short fight, Ji Ming Marquis didn't want to fight anymore and left. The world demon-slaying situation was in a stalemate again. The world demon slaying situation was in a stalemate again. At this moment, a huge dragon gate appeared in Tianji City. A middle-aged man in a white robe with blue patterns walked out of the dragon gate. He was as powerful as the Zhao family's supremes. Upon seeing the person who had come, the expressions of the supreme beings present were slightly surprised. Why had he also come? Lord of Taibai Prefecture, why are you here? Tuli asked. The world demon slaying situation is the responsibility of the world. I'm here to make the last move, the Lord of Taibai Prefecture said calmly. Oh. Do you have a way to stop him? Tuli was surprised. You can just wait and see, the Lord of Taibai Prefecture replied. At the western border of the central state, the sound of Brahma descended from the heavens and the void cracked open. 9 bodhisattvas in Buddhist robes walked out. The one in the lead had a solemn Buddhist appearance and a pure and holy aura. In West Earth's Jianfo Mountain, Pavilion Master Jing Feng and the 8 Dharma protectors appeared together. They received Light Venerable's decree and came to quell the demonic disaster. With the Palace Master's guidance, the devil's body is up ahead. Pavilion Master, please, said Renjyoga. Amitba. Benefactor, please lead the way, Pavilion Master Jing Feng chanted. Renjyoga nodded and stepped forward. He led the Buddha Mountain group in the direction indicated by the Manor Head's secret technique. 3,000 li away, the phoenix let out a long cry as it sped past the 9 heavens. The allied forces of various sects formed a triangle formation to surround it, but they were still one step behind, unable to trap the demon. The border of Zhongzhou state was right in front of them and they were about to break the stalemate. Suddenly, the light of Buddha shone and blocked the way to knowing destiny state. Demon, you have nowhere to run, said the pavilion master of the Jingfeng Pavilion as he descended from the sky. Soon after, the 8 Buddhist protectors stood in the air, guarding the 8 directions and cutting off the devil's path of retreat. The phoenix transformed and appeared in red. Its long black and white hair was even more dazzling. Knowing destiny state's last hope of leaving was destroyed, but his expression was still calm. He clenched his fists and the King of Hell and Red Viper appeared in his hands. Without saying a word, he moved and his sword started to kill. Buddha is merciful. The 8 Buddhist protectors chanted and the light of Buddha shone brightly. The next moment, 8 huge golden Buddha statues appeared behind them. The cycle of reincarnation rotated and opened the Buddha Mountain Demon cleansing formation. With a clang of the sword, the Buddha's palm blocked the attack. Pavilion Master Jing Feng, who was as immovable as a mountain, was not hurt at all. With the support of the formation, the devil was doomed. Demon, the sea of bitterness is boundless. Turn back and you will be saved, Pavilion Master Jing Feng said softly. There is no saving in the sea of bitterness. Knowing destiny state responded. The demonic chi on his sword suddenly exploded. With a clang, the Buddha was forced to take half a step back. Between thoughts. Seeing that the devil would not be able to turn back, Pavilion Master Jing Feng did not say anything else. He formed a Buddhist seal with both hands. In the brilliant light, the holy light shone and turned the night into day. With the Buddhist holy technique in front, the Red Viper's power was immediately suppressed. Seeing this, Ning Chen changed his stance and the phoenix fire turned into 9 suns. The heavenly book martial arts rose to the extreme and blocked the Buddhist holy technique. With a loud bang, waves surged. The 8 Buddhist protectors flipped their palms and the golden Buddha statues behind them shone brightly, dispersing the aftermath of the battle. Outside the battle, Renjyoga looked at the demon cleansing formation in front of him. His eyes flashed with surprise. The Manor Master was right. Buddha and demon were natural enemies. Using Buddha to cleanse demon was the best way. Break. The sword was suppressed and could not display its full power. Ning Chen waved his left hand and the Red Viper disappeared. In the purple light, the demon blade appeared. The King of Hell's 2 weapons attacked together. Ghost woman, let's fight together in this battle. In a battle of life and death, Ning Chen held the King of Hell's two weapons in his hands. There was no longer any distracting thoughts in his mind. There was only the determination to not give up. Seeing the change in Ning Chen's aura, Pavilion Master Jing Feng's expression turned serious. This kind of peak was too familiar. 10 years ago, the swordsman who walked up to Tianfo Mountain was the first time he saw what a sword above a sword was. Sword style, break. The tip of the sword passed by. 100-meter-long mist roared and surged, cutting open the sky. The powerful sword above a sword was unstoppable, destroying everything in front of it. Boundless Dharma. Pavilion Master Jing Feng twirled his fingers and the Buddha's light shone. In the formation, the 8 Buddhist protectors praised at the same time. The boundless Buddha's light shone and blocked the sword at the peak. The two techniques collided and blood splattered. The red viper disappeared in the blink of an eye. Riding the wind, the blade slashed towards the Buddhist protector in front. Pavilion Master Jing Feng flipped his palm and blocked the blade. The blade moved with the wind and turned at an extreme speed. Its afterimages were like illusions and the blade was like flowing light. The body was extremely fast and the blade was sharp. In the formation, the 4 Buddhist protectors moved. They turned into shadows and moved at the same speed, joining forces to seal the blade. Sword style, break the mountains. In the extreme speed confrontation, Knowing Destiny calmed down and moved his sword. The heavy sword fell down. The heavy sword had the power to destroy mountains. At this moment, the other 4 Buddhist protectors also moved. With the same divine power, they flipped their palms to block the sword. There was a loud explosion and the aftermath roared. Heavy against heavy, the heaven and earth were split into 4. It was a battle of the pinnacle. The purple sword and the blood-red blade blossomed in the night sky. 8 Buddhist guardians and a pavilion master worked together to besiege Meng Qi. With the Knowing Destiny blade and sword in hand, Meng Qi abandoned all distracting thoughts and began to display the shocking supreme will of blade and sword. The 4 figures were like illusions. They were extremely fast. The phoenix body moved strangely. Their blades were like willows in the wind. Extreme speed against extreme speed. The palms of the 4 were like falling mountains. Their divine power could destroy souls. The red viper calmed down and condensed Yuan Qi. Their swords were like rainbows falling from the 9th heaven. There was no need to argue. Strong, so strong that it was shocking. Even if he lost the foundation of being unparalleled in the world, the Knowing Destiny realm was not easy to obtain. Thousands of miles away, the Supremes were silent. They could not suppress the waves in their hearts. If the foundation was not destroyed, who in the world could stop him? This person could not be left alive. The plan of the world was about to be completed. 500 miles away from the Demon Slayer formation, 9 half-supremes flew past. Behind them, countless shadows followed. The allied forces of various sects were about to join the battle. In the long night, there was no light. The Knowing Destiny realm in the battle was shocking with their swords and sabers, but they still could not escape from the Demon Slayer formation. Sword style. When the 9 Supremes were about to arrive, the King of Hell in the Knowing Destiny realm spiraled into the sky. For a moment, heaven and earth were frozen. Immediately, endless sword will spread. 100 miles away, the swords in the hands of the strong cultivators of various sects trembled. At this moment, they did not listen to their masters. They were out of their sheaths and flew into the distance. Nirvana. The final sword, the strongest sword, bloomed magnificently in the dark night. The sword overturned the sky and the void within 100 miles collapsed. Pavilion leader Jing Feng and the 8 protectors joined hands to block the attack. However, there was a horrifying tremor, and the shockwaves were chaotic. The 8 golden Buddha statues could not withstand the huge force and shattered. The demon-cleansing formation of the Buddhist sect was broken. Ugh! A pool of blood splashed all over the sky. The 9 Buddhist strong cultivators took a few steps back. Their mouths were red. In the battle, Ning Chen saw an opening and turned into a phoenix shadow, flying away quickly. Chase! The pavilion master Jing Feng steadied himself and shouted. He quickly chased after Ning Chen. The 8 protectors moved. The swastika shone brightly and chased after Ning Chen. That direction is. Seeing the demon escaping, Ren Jioga, who was far away from the battle, stepped forward and chased after Ning Chen. Under the night, the 5 directions surrounded the knowing destiny realm. All the escape routes were blocked. The severely injured knowing destiny realm could not escape. 300 miles away, the phoenix turned into a red robe. Looking at the dead end ahead, he sighed deeply. Heaven's will. In front of him was a gloomy and silent dead end. White bones could be seen everywhere. Coincidentally, it was the most terrifying forbidden land in the human world, the demonic Wuxia. The road ahead was a more dangerous dead end. Heaven's will was playing tricks on him. It wanted to cut off all the hope of the knowing destiny realm. Why don't you continue to run? Outside the demonic Wuxia, figures arrived one after another. The 9 Supremes showed up and the Bodhisattva blocked the way. There was no hope. Even the Supreme Beings could not save the situation. The demon-slaying formation had been completed. 9 demigods, 1 Buddhist pavilion lord, 8 Buddhist Dharma protectors, and thousands of experts from various sects looked at the red-clothed young man. Ning Chen looked at the people in front of him calmly and remembered their faces. Then he turned and walked into the demonic Wuxia. The next moment, a terrifying black light rushed to the sky and blocked the moonlight. The demon entered the dead end. The pavilion master Jing Feng could not stop the 9 half-supremes. His heart sank. Maybe he was overthinking, but they felt uneasy because they could not see the demon-slaying demon with their own eyes. That look just now was indescribable. Ning Chen. At this moment, a blue light gathered in front of the demonic Wuxia. The butterfly in the flower, who had been chasing for a day and a night, finally arrived. Looking at the red figure disappearing in the black light, her delicate body trembled. Her heart ached so much that she could hardly breathe. After a while, the butterfly turned back and looked at the strong cultivators in front of her. Her beautiful face was so cold that it was terrifying. With a boom, thunder from the 9 heavens lit up the night. The butterfly in the moon's eyes were as red as blood. Her black hair broke free and danced in the wind. She had entered the demonic tribulation, and the wind and thunder were shocking. I, the butterfly in the flower, swear to heaven that if he does not come out alive, all the sects in the world will be buried with him when I attain Tao. Her voice reached the 9 heavens. Heaven and earth bore witness. The butterfly swore that she would not stop until she died. Chapter 502. The world's demons were all killed, and those who knew their destiny entered the demonic wheel. Dark light filled the sky, and within the heavy atmosphere, coffins rose from the ground one after another. The lids of the coffins fell down, and ancient experts walked out one after another. Ning Chen brandished his sword, and the scarlet sword appeared. Endless baleful energy coiled around his body, blocking the corrosion of the dragon burial ground's strange power. The ancient experts' figures swept over, and their palms reflected the dark moon. Their might was shocking. The most dangerous place in the human world. Danger arrived as soon as one entered it. Ning Chen's feet moved, and his red clothes flashed through the cracks. His sword danced through the spring and autumn, and with a loud clang, he blocked the palms of 2 ancient experts. Within the dark light, he was an ambitious and ruthless character when he was alive, and even after he died, he was still a ghost. He was a senseless and painless corpse deity, and it was difficult for swords and palms to injure him. The moment the sword and palms collided, the strange power of the dragon burial ground became more and more powerful. The baleful energy on the sword actually flowed away endlessly at this moment, swallowed by the power of the danger zone. Ning Chen's mind focused. He had seen how the supreme elders of various sects fell in the danger zone, so he knew that he had to leave this strange place as soon as possible. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to hold on for too long. Book of Sun, 9 Suns burning the heavens. The king of hell entered the 9 heavens, and the 9 suns illuminated the mortal world. The divine suns circling around the sword turned into angry waves, and as the sword passed, the corpse deity retreated. In the blink of an eye, the red-clothed figure flashed past, escaping from the corpse deity's encirclement. 10 li away, the red-clothed figure stopped. Suddenly, he spat out a mouthful of blood. The injuries from the past few days of battle had actually erupted, and attacked his divine sense. With a clang, the sword stabbed into the ground. Ning Chen gathered his energy to suppress the injuries in his body. Now was not the time to stop, and he had to hold on. More and more corpses covered the ground. For thousands of years, countless experts tried to find the immortal palace, but in the end, they were all buried here. They didn't even see what the immortal palace looked like. The baleful energy on the scarlet sword that was as red as blood became weaker and weaker. The vicious sword that once shook the central state, under the devouring of the dragon burial ground, was gradually unable to hold on. The red-clothed figure hurriedly moved, but the dragon burial ground seemed boundless, and he couldn't escape. Time passed by unknowingly, and it was hard to tell how long they had traveled. There was no day or night in this land of danger. The sky was overcast, and there was always only a single dark moon illuminating the sky. Pooh! A flaw appeared in the baleful aura protecting Ning Chen's body, and a strand of strange power entered his body. Ning Chen staggered, and 10% of his life force instantly disappeared. It affected his injuries, and he vomited blood. The terrifying power was enough to make one feel fear. The surroundings were silent. Looking around, the number of bones gradually decreased. It was clear that there weren't many people who had made it this far. Under the dark night, the phoenix flame rose and burned away the strange power that had entered his body. Ning Chen endured his injuries and pushed forward with all his might. He knew that only by continuing forward would he have hope. If he stopped, he would only be waiting for death. In the endless night, there was no dawn. Knowing destiny walked on the road to hell step by step. No matter how hard it was, he never gave up. He was still dragging the 2 swords behind him. He was no longer alone. He didn't ask for the protection of the gods or the mercy of the heavens, because the gods and the heavens had never shown any mercy to the knowing destiny state. In the shadow of the phoenix, a woman in a red wedding dress was sleeping quietly in a coffin made of ice and snow. She was the Rakshasa of hell. She had walked through the mercilessness of hell and fell in love in the human world. The night was so quiet that even the sound of the wind had disappeared. In the endless darkness, there was only the sound of footsteps, which never stopped for a moment. "You've already come this far. Do you still not trust me?" Black light gathered, and a black-haired figure in black clothes walked out. His eyes were cold and emotionless, without any fluctuations of the human world. Knowing destiny state didn't say anything. He still walked forward step by step. With each step, the power of the phoenix body weakened a little, and the seal of the killing body weakened a little. After walking for a long time, the long black and white hair behind the phoenix body turned white, indicating that the devil body was about to come again. The consciousness of the knowing destiny state with 2 souls in one body was about to change. At the end of the road, it was difficult to move forward. The phoenix body gave up the chance to use the substitute talisman to repair itself, and returned the control to the other consciousness in its body. "Devil body, no matter how different you and I are, we've come this far just to wake up the ghost girl. Don't let the knowing destiny state hate you." After saying that, the phoenix body that had been severely exhausted gradually fell into a deep sleep. The two consciousnesses changed, and the horrible killing karma rushed to the ninth heaven. The devil body opened its eyes, and the world trembled. The devil body's killing body reappeared, and millions of killing karma surrounded its body. The red sword was shining brightly, and the evil spirit waves surged for dozens of miles. You've made the right choice. From now on, you can rest. I'll walk the rest of the way, the devil body said lightly. The killing karma protected its body, and the immortal devil body walked forward. Different bodies, different ideals, but there was only one thing that was engraved in its heart, and it would never forget it. The strange power in the dragon burial ground was getting stronger and stronger. The devil body's killing karma protected its body, and it blocked the loss of its vitality. It stepped forward like a shooting star. After walking for a long time, the ground suddenly shook, and the ground sank 3 feet. The scene in the dragon burial ground suddenly changed. The sand waterfall with a diameter of hundreds of feet was flowing, and it kept falling toward the center. The devil body stepped in the air and jumped up. At this moment, vines swept out from the flowing sand waterfall, entangling the devil body's legs and pulling them down. The devil body's eyes flashed coldly. It slashed out with its sword, and the red devil flames burned the vines to ashes. The dragon burial ground actually has vitality. How strange. After the sword strike, the black vines that filled the sky once again spread out. They were endless, like a net. The demonic body looked at the shocking scene below him. Qi Lian's sharp edge turned, and a blood-red light rose. With a wave of his sword, rumbling sounds could be heard as the 100 feet of sand was split apart. The next moment, the devil body's killing body jumped down and entered the sand waterfall. Below the sand waterfall was a wondrous scene. In the dark underground world, thousands of black devil's snare flowers were quietly blooming, and the vines were dancing in the air. Although the devil's snare flowers blooming in the dragon burial ground were beautiful, danger lurked everywhere. As soon as a stranger entered, countless vines wrapped around them. The vines were covered in black mist, and everywhere they passed, there was a sizzling sound of corrosion. Blood flame. The devil body calmed down. The red devil flames surged out from the sword and turned into a world-burning fire, drowning the sea of black flowers in front of him. The demonic flowers were burned out in the devil flames. The knowing destiny killer body looked at the dark world in front of him, and his eyes flashed. It was hard to imagine that there was a world below the dragon burial ground that was not affected by the dragon burial ground. Was it formed naturally, or was it man-made? Devil's snare flowers were Buddha flowers, but the ones here were strange and dangerous. The devil body was about to leave, but suddenly, he stopped. Looking at the demonic flower seeds burning in the ashes, he could not help but frown. What tenacious vitality! With a wave of his hand, the devil's snare seeds flew into the devil body's hand. The sizzling sound of corrosion kept swallowing the former's vital essence. Even the killing karma could not stop it. Phoenix body, lend me your power. The devil body opened his eyes, and the world shook. Endless killing karma rose. Behind him, the shadow of a phoenix appeared. It was blurry and difficult to distinguish. Obviously, it was extremely weak. The phoenix cried, and a strong suction force came out. The devil's snare seeds flew into the phoenix shadow's stomach, and their aura gradually disappeared. After doing all this, the devil body continued to walk forward. These devil's snare seeds would be of great use after he got out. He was not a gentleman if he did not take revenge. He would repay the kindness of all the sects in the world tenfold. The devil had his own demonic frown. In his opinion, the phoenix body had too many concerns, and he really did not like it. No matter how meticulous one's thoughts were, one would not be able to abandon a chess piece mercilessly. There would always be times when one would make a mistake. He had seen the entire situation of the Zhao family. If the phoenix body could be ruthless and kill the potential variable, Zhao Yosu, before the final piece was placed, everything that happened later would not have happened. Unfortunately, one wrong move caused the whole game to be lost. No matter how good the previous game was, it was completely useless because of this move. In the dark underground world, the devil body walked forward for hundreds of miles. There was no end to the strange world, and only the silent and endless darkness accompanied him. Something is wrong. After walking for a long time, it was still difficult to get out. The devil body noticed the abnormality and looked at the dark world around him. After a while, his eyes narrowed slightly. It was a restriction. He was trapped in a certain space. Ha! With a deep shout, endless killing intent rose around the devil body. The demonic power on the sword rushed into the sky, and a bloody light rose. The sword slashed the sky. The sword slashed down with a bang, leaving behind a dazzling bloody scar in the sky, causing the heavens and the earth to rumble and tremble. However, after a short moment, a strange light rose up, and it actually swiftly repaired the shattered heavens and the earth, sealing off all paths of escape once more. Seeing this, the devil body's mind sank. This was troublesome. He was not good at restrictions and formations. If Dao Kuei was here, he might be able to see the mystery of this formation, but he could not. The ancient Taoism was the master of restrictions and formations. However, when the calamity of the underworld king was imminent, he did not have time to learn these things from Dao Kuei. Compared to formations, breaking restrictions was abnormally complicated. It required a lot of deduction. One wrong move and it would be impossible to get out. The restriction that trapped him now was obviously not ordinary. It would be difficult to break it. Phoenix body. The devil body called out. However, there was no response for a long time. The heavily injured phoenix body fell into a deep sleep and would not wake up in a short period of time. The human body had 3 souls. The heaven soul controlled intelligence, the earth soul controlled strength, and the life soul controlled life and death. Losing the phoenix body with the heaven soul was undoubtedly a problem. Just as Zhenming was trapped in the demonic Wuxia, the butterfly did not return to Central State College. The blue bird bid farewell and completely disappeared from Central State College. At the border of the 2 dynasties, the butterfly who had entered the demonic calamity walked over step by step. Her black pupils were as red as blood, and her black hair danced in the wind. Before the Supreme Being, the butterfly stepped into the final calamity and could not turn back. On the blood-stained wasteland, broken halberds and spears were everywhere. Time had not left a trace. The spiritual energy of the former divine weapons had dissipated, and they had become useless scrap metal. The world was glorious, and the world was desolate. Endless demonic energy and resentment filled the ancient battlefield, not dissipating for thousands of years. When the world rose, the people suffered. When the world fell, the people suffered. The autumn wind was bleak, blowing up sand and dust. The butterfly walked through the ancient battlefield, step by step, gradually moving away. Chapter 503. In the demonic Wuxia, 1 month after the Demon Slayer War, deep in the forbidden land of the human world, knowing destiny demon body was trapped in an unknown restriction. The phoenix body was severely injured, and the heaven soul with wisdom was in a deep sleep. The knowing destiny killing body could only rely on its own strength to gradually deduce the infinite changes of the restriction formation. After a whole month, the demon body deduced 36,000 changes, but it was still difficult. Forbidden Underworld. The first restriction was broken, and the strange light disappeared. The demon body squinted his eyes, and the name of the restriction flashed in his eyes. The most terrifying restrictions in the world were the Forbidden Underworld, the Forbidden Time, and the Forbidden Celestial. It was said that these restrictions were not created by humans, but were given by God. He had never thought that the place he stepped into was one of them. The forbidden underworld was a space restriction that was formed by countless restrictions. It was said that there were millions or even tens of millions of changes. Once a person stepped into it, it was almost impossible to get out until he was trapped to death. It was called the forbidden underworld, which showed how terrible this restriction was. Big trouble. The demon body thought. Although his power was higher than the phoenix body, his ability to deduce was not as good as the phoenix body. The forbidden underworld had tens of millions of changes, and it was getting more and more complicated. He could only deduce 36,000 changes in 1 month. If that was the case, it would take him more than 20 years to get out. Complaining and hesitating were useless. The demon body calmed down again and started to deduce the secrets of the forbidden underworld. So what if it took him 20 years? He could afford to wait. There was no time in the underworld. In the sealed world, the black-clothed and black-haired figure was silent. In the blink of an eye, several months had passed. In the central state, the situation changed. The Tai-Bai house and a few secluded sects came out one after another. The world was glorious, and all sects no longer chose to hide from the world. The gods had returned, and the demonic disaster was over. Every sect believed that the golden era after the chaos was coming. The world would return to its peak, and all sects would come out to fight for a share of the pie. Outside the demonic will see, the void rolled, and a figure floating in the white fog appeared. He looked into the distance, and a complicated expression flashed in his eyes. Half a year had passed. Even if he wanted to kill him, he had no chance. There was nothing left for the human world. After finishing the last thing it had to do, it would also return to the primitive land. In the east wing of the Zhao family, a girl in purple pushed open the door and entered the room where knowing destiny had once stayed. Her cold face no longer had any trace of its former charm. After the fusion of the Zhao family's 9 supreme soul power, the Zhao family's Liusu could never return to how it used to be. The candlelight flickered, illuminating every corner of the room. Zhao Liusu sat at the table for the entire night without moving. In the Yin Soul prison, the Yulan in the prison had already disappeared. Only the dried blood on the ground quietly told of the desolation of this tragic event. The fickleness of the world always made people feel helpless. They couldn't leave when they wanted to, but they couldn't stay when they wanted to. In the ancient temple at the foot of the mountain, more than half of the devil's ceiling pagoda had been completed. Subhuti looked in the direction of the devil will see and sighed in his heart. The devil had already left. Would this pagoda still be of any use? Outside the mountain, in the sky above the Qingxi lake, dark clouds rolled, and rain came again. On the Qingxi bridge, a girl in a blue and white dress walked over with an umbrella. Looking at the most beautiful scenery in the human world, the nostalgia in her eyes was so clear. With a boom, heavy rain poured down from the mountain. The beautiful girl on the bridge left. In the ancient temple, the void rolled and the demon venerable appeared. His palm was like a falling mountain, causing the world to tremble. Subhuti focused his mind and raised the Buddha beads in his hand. His palm condensed Buddha energy and met the attack with a bang. With a violent tremor, the ancient temple shook. Thousands of Buddha arrays rose, separating the surrounding 100 feet from the outside world. Amitabha. There were no other words. The battle between Buddha and demon in the rain was a matter of gratitude and hatred. It was also the fate of the difficult coexistence of good and evil. In the rain, the white flood dragon's combat power reached its peak. He waved his hand and held a sword. The rainwater gathered and turned into a waterfall that covered the sky. It coiled around his body like a real dragon that appeared in the human world. Subhuti twisted his fingers and the Buddha beads flew into the air. The swastika spun rapidly and pressed down from the sky, trying to trap the demon venerable. Waterfall. The white flood dragon raised his hand. The rain turned into a heavenly waterfall and blocked the Buddha beads that fell from the sky. The most terrifying supreme in the human world attacked with all his strength. The wind and clouds in the golden Buddha temple were chaotic. The water waves rolled and the golden light shone brightly. Although Subhudi's cultivation was higher, the white flood dragon in the rain was strengthened by the heavens and his combat power increased sharply. He could compete with the strongest Buddha in the human world. The battle between the two supreme lasted for a long time. When the wind stopped and the rain stopped, the battle ended. The golden Buddha temple regained its tranquility. Only the 100 feet around the demon-subduing pagoda was destroyed, showing the intensity of the battle. In the forbidden land of the underworld in the sea of demonic wheel, half a year had passed. The demon venerable broke a few more layers of restrictions. However, the road to the underworld was difficult. It was still far from being able to walk out. The sleeping phoenix body had not woken up. There were no signs of it waking up. In the Eastern Divine Prefecture, in the imperial city of Great Xia, many people knelt down to welcome the return of a legend. Xia Qi, who had grown into an adult, stood quietly in front of all the officials. He was extraordinarily handsome and bore some resemblance to his father. However, there was a hint of a smile in his eyes and a belly full of black water. It made people involuntarily think of a certain young man from back then. After many years of recuperation, the 1,000-year-old Great Xia gradually regained its former prosperity. The three most powerful dynasties in the Divine Prefecture, Northern Meng, Great Xia, and the Barbarian dynasty, tacitly chose to maintain this hard-won peace. There were no more large-scale wars. Half a day later, in front of Zhang Xuan's tomb, the legend stood silently. He stood there for several days and nights. No one dared to disturb him, not even Xia Qi. Perhaps only Ho, who had left, could say a few words to this legend of the Great Xia. 10 years had changed too much. Zhang Xuan's departure took away the last tears of knowing destiny. Men did not shed tears easily, only because they had not been deeply hurt. Time was merciless. No one could resist the reincarnation of destiny. Even the powerful knowing destiny and the legend of the Great Xia could not change this fact. At the end of another year, Xia Xinyu came. Just like before, she would come to visit her mother's grave year after year. 10 years had passed, the former 9th princess of Grand Xia had become even more beautiful. Her beauty, which could topple empires, was so beautiful that any description would pale in comparison. In the past, when Zhang Sun asked for a marriage, neither of them agreed. Whether it was because they were young and immature or because fate had not yet arrived, they missed it forever. Uncle. Xia Xinyu first bowed to the legend in front of the tomb. Then she stood up and walked to the tomb, carefully cleaning the dust on it. Xinyu, do you regret it? Prince Yan asked calmly. No. Xia Xinyu said softly. Prince Yan nodded and did not ask any more questions. If they were not fated, they could not force it. If they did not meet at the right time, he could not change anything. In the Barbarian dynasty, the princess of the Barbarian dynasty who had been away for 10 years had returned. The entire palace was shaken. When the crown prince who had ascended the throne 3 years ago heard the news, he suddenly stood up from his throne and went out to welcome her. In front of the palace, there was a beautiful girl. Just like 10 years ago, she was clean and flawless. The newly appointed imperial guards had never seen this princess before. No matter what, they refused to let her in. The older guards behind them broke out in cold sweat. Commander, this really is Princess Ah Man. If we don't let her in, when the king comes, we'll all have to bear the consequences, said one of the guards. No. Without a pass or the king's personal decree, no one can enter. The guard commander was stubborn and refused without hesitation. Square-headed, said Ah Man, pouting. The little girl was kind. Although she could beat up a bunch of people in front of her, she still obediently waited in front of the palace. She knew that her father and brother should be arriving soon. As expected, before even a moment had passed, a figure rushed over. Seeing the guard commander blocking Ah Man's way, he immediately sent him flying with an ashen face. "Brother Wang." Wild smiled happily when he saw who it was. "Ah Man, you've finally returned. I've missed you to death." The Crown Prince's expression rapidly changed and he became abnormally excited. He took a step forward and was about to take a closer look when he was also sent flying by a kick. "Scram, don't block my way." A majestic figure appeared. After sending his son flying, his expression also rapidly changed. He was so excited that he couldn't speak. "Father!" A man shouted charmingly, and the smile on her little face became even more brilliant. "It's good that you've returned, it's good that you've returned." The barbarian king tightly hugged his daughter. A trace of undetectable tears flashed through his eyes. Once upon a time, he really thought he would never see his precious daughter again. On the side, the Crown Prince and the guard commander miserably crawled up. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The Crown Prince couldn't go against his father, so he vented his anger on the guard commander. He angrily glared at him. In the future, this king needs to be more observant. In the barbarian palace, the princess can go wherever she wants. If you dare block her again, this king will skin you alive. Yes. The guard commander lowered his head. "You're not allowed to curse people." Ah Man turned her head and unhappily said. "I'm not cursing people." Crown Prince Barbarian's body trembled when he heard this. His originally angry face was suddenly filled with a smile as he chuckled. Ah Man walked over and patted the guard commander's head. She quietly muttered, "Square-headed." The guard commander was completely confused. He didn't understand what she meant. The barbarian king also didn't understand. However, he didn't need to ask to know that this was something that stinky brat had taught his precious daughter. In the princess's courtyard, Hongzhu was excitedly standing in front of the courtyard, waiting for the princess to return. 10 years had passed, but Hongzhu still hadn't chosen to leave the palace to marry. She had remained in the courtyard, waiting day after day. A woman's youth passed in the blink of an eye. In these 10 years, even the barbarian king, who had never been very understanding, had personally come to ask about Hongzhu's feelings. He had even made an exception and promised that Hongzhu could choose her husband. However, in the end, Hongzhu had tactfully refused. When the sun was about to set, a man walked over in her jade green dress. When Hongzhu saw her, she excitedly walked over and knelt down. Hongzhu greets the princess. "Like I said, I won't kneel anymore." A man raised Hongzhu's hand. "Yes, this servant forgot. I won't kneel in the future." Hongzhu wiped away the tears at the corner of her eyes and did her best to smile. Chapter 504. Barbarian Palace. Princess Red Candle stood in front of the dressing table, helping the princess dress up. The face in the mirror was still as beautiful and charming as it was 10 years ago. There was not the slightest change. She was the most beautiful pearl of the barbarian dynasty. She was so dazzling that no one could bear to blaspheme her. "Princess, have you seen him?" Red Candle asked softly. "No." A man shook her head. "I couldn't find him for a long time. I was homesick, so I came back first." Red Candle smiled. "Princess and the knowing destiny Marquis are connected. You'll meet again sooner or later." "Yes." A man nodded. She was also thinking the same thing. Another month passed in the forbidden underworld of the demonic will see. The trapped knowing destiny devil's body evolved 36,000 changes again. For more than half a year, it was forced to become a half-baked restriction master from knowing nothing about restriction. However, the Yellow Springs forbidden domain's level was too high. It had tens of millions of changes. Without several decades, it would be impossible to break through it. The main intelligence's phoenix body had already fallen into a deep slumber. Although the demon body's combat strength was stronger, it was useless against the ever-changing forbidden of the netherworld. The more restrictions the Yellow Springs Forbidden Domain broke, the harder it was to see the mysteries of the Yellow Springs Forbidden Domain. The killing body evolved 1,200 changes a day. Every time it broke through a restriction, it would feel the Yellow Springs Forbidden Domain change even more. Although its attainments and restrictions were becoming more and more extraordinary, it was difficult to increase the speed of its evolution. Another 4 months later, a year was about to pass. Suddenly, phoenix flames rose within the Forbidden Domain. Amid the cries of the phoenix, red light gathered and a red-clothed figure appeared beside the devil body. Your origin has yet to recover. Forcefully waking up will only add to your injuries, said the devil body calmly. No problem. I can still hold on. The phoenix body looked at the constantly changing space and slowly said, Yellow Springs Forbidden Domain. Is there a way to break it? Asked the devil body. It won't be easy, but it's not impossible. How long will it take? Asked the devil body. 10 months, the phoenix body replied. The devil body narrowed its eyes. The world needs 100 years, but I need 20. High perception is also one of my strengths. The phoenix body smiled faintly and walked forward. It raised its right hand and phoenix fire instantly filled the air. It quickly spread throughout the divine forbidden space and filled every corner. Seeing this, the demonic body didn't waste any more time. He walked over and stabbed the red chain into the ground. Then, he sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes to adjust his breathing. Everyone had their own specialties. It was more appropriate to leave the task of breaking the restriction to the phoenix body. Within the Yellow Springs Forbidden Grounds, Hongyi waved her hand. Phoenix flames burned the sky, and the forbidden grounds were quickly broken. Starlight flashed in her calm eyes as she memorized the changes of each forbidden ground. In the next moment, the restrictions were repaired, and everything returned to normal. However, the restriction that had been broken through once could no longer stop the phoenix body's footsteps. With a flip of his palm, the restriction shattered. The number 1 sage of the divine prefecture was undoubtedly Fan Lingyue, followed by Knowing Destiny, and lastly, the rest of the world. The existence of the Northern Meng military advisor was not tolerated by the heavens. He was born as one of the 7 fatalities, and his lifespan was less than 25 years. Knowing Destiny had experienced 2 lifetimes. Although he was slightly inferior, he was still much better than the rest of the world. 10 months wasn't short, but compared to 100 years in the human world, it was just a blink of an eye. In the divine forbidden space, the phoenix body tried its best to break the restriction. In the world, misfortune and fortune were interdependent. Although the Yellow Springs was difficult to break, it wasn't as dangerous as the time restriction and the celestial execution restriction. While Knowing Destiny was breaking the restriction, he tried his best to memorize the changes of each restriction. His understanding of restrictions also improved by leaps and bounds. Heaven and earth gave him a rare opportunity. The road to the Yellow Springs was difficult. Knowing Destiny went through it once, he wouldn't allow himself to fall at the same place a second time. 10 months later, heaven and earth rumbled and trembled. The divine forbidden space quickly fell apart. The demonic body opened his eyes. He stood up and looked at the collapsing space around him. A glint flashed across his eyes. In just 10 months, he actually succeeded. Demonic body, I'll leave the rest of the journey to you. In order to break the divine forbidden grounds, the phoenix body that barely held on for 10 months dissipated bit by bit and merged back into the demonic body. Although the 2 bodies had different ideologies, they could temporarily put aside all grievances regarding the ghost lady. The Yellow Springs restriction dissipated. The demonic body walked out and continued to walk forward step by step. Knowing destiny was one body and three transformations. The original body was in order to repay the ghost lady's kindness and might not be able to return for 100 years. The phoenix body was in charge of finding a way to awaken the ghost lady. It was difficult for her to move forward. The appearance of the killing body wasn't originally part of the plan, but now it had become the most important combat force. After walking through the Yellow Springs path, countless large pits appeared in front of the demonic body. The black soil and the dusky sky made it silent and gloomy. After walking for a long time, the demonic body suddenly stopped. He looked at a tomb in the distance and frowned slightly. The tombstone in front of the tomb had been corroded by the passage of time. The words on it couldn't be seen clearly. However, in this dangerous place, there was a large tomb. It meant that someone had been here a long time ago or had lived here. The demonic body's gaze turned serious. After thinking for a moment, he continued to walk forward. Unexpectedly, not long after he walked, there were more and more tombs in front of him. They looked at least 10,000 years old. The tombstones had been corroded to the point of almost turning into dust. The demonic body's expression became more and more serious. What kind of place was this? After walking for another 100 miles, the scene changed again. Hundreds of thousands of talismans were suspended on the crisscrossing ropes. However, too much time had passed, and the spiritual energy on the talismans had already dissipated. They would disperse upon contact. After 1,000 steps, in the dusky distance, a huge underground stone palace appeared. The stone door was tightly shut and hadn't been opened for tens of thousands of years. The demonic body walked forward and pushed open the stone door. He was on guard and carefully observed the surroundings. Fortunately, nothing unexpected happened. The stone palace's door opened. What entered his eyes was the same crisscrossing talismans hanging high up. However, the talismans here still had spirituality and hadn't died after tens of thousands of years. Silence. It was still silence. It was so quiet that it made one's heart flutter. It was the silence of tens of thousands of years. Heaven and earth seemed to have lost the passage of time. The demonic aura responded and the void shook. In the next moment, the entire stone palace shook violently. A terrifying aura that could make heaven and earth crawl quickly awakened. Thousands of talismans suddenly shone with spiritual light and suppressed the awakening forbidden existence. Demon. The Shah body's heart sank. There was actually such a terrifying demon suppressed under the demonic will ocean. As if it had sensed someone's arrival, the shaking under the stone palace became more and more intense. Demonic chi surged out and swept across heaven and earth. Suddenly, the void changed. Separated by endless space, the two demons looked at each other. One stood in the void, and the other was hundreds of feet tall. However, only half of its body was left. Its lower body had been cut off and disappeared. "Young Junior, I have waited for you for far too long," the giant demon said. "Who are you?" Knowing Destiny's demonic body asked with an unusually serious expression. "My name is Xian Luo," the giant demon said slowly. Knowing Destiny had never heard of this name before, he was on guard. There was no such existence above the 5 regions. Although Supremes could also form Dharmakayas, the demon in front of him was obviously not as simple as a Dharmakaya. "You are not from the 5 regions," Knowing Destiny said. "I come from the heavens beyond that you speak of." "I am indeed not from the 5 regions," Xian Luo replied. "With your ability, why would you be suppressed here?" Knowing Destiny continued to ask. "A long time ago, I was careless and was ambushed by some self-proclaimed righteous people. That is why I am trapped here. Young Junior, I know you have a lot of doubts, but as long as you are willing to help me get out, I will agree to one request of yours." "Any request?" Xian Luo promised. "Any request?" Knowing Destiny's demonic body narrowed his eyes and asked. "Any request?" Xian Luo replied. I want to revive someone, Knowing Destiny said in a low voice. Yes. Xian Luo nodded and replied. How can I help you? Knowing Destiny asked. In the depths of this stone palace, the other half of my body is sealed. The curse is slightly weaker. You only need to destroy the runes on it, and I will have a way to restore my true body and break out of the seal, Xian Luo said, suppressing the throbbing in his heart. Knowing Destiny nodded and said, I hope you will remember your promise after you get out. Demons are the most trustworthy race, Xian Luo replied. Xian Luo replied. In the next moment, the changed space returned to normal. In the dim stone palace, only the light of countless runes could be vaguely seen. The demonic body stepped forward and looked at the runes hanging high in the stone palace. His eyes kept flashing, and no one knew what he was thinking. The stone palace was very big. After walking for a quarter of an hour, Knowing Destiny finally saw the other half of Xian Luo's sealed body. After tens of thousands of years, half of the giant demon's body had been petrified. The runes sealed the demonic chi of the other half, preventing it from leaking out. Knowing Destiny walked forward and raised his hand to touch the petrified half of Xian Luo's body. Just then, the runes gathered in the sky and an illusory figure appeared in the stone palace. The soul of the extremely old man had almost completely dissipated. However, one could still tell how powerful he had been when he was alive from the extraordinary fluctuation of his soul power. Perhaps, he had already surpassed the supremacy of the mortal world, just like the headmaster. Young man, do you really want to save this demon? The old man asked seriously. Why not? Knowing Destiny put down his hand and said calmly. Since you have come here, you should have seen the thousands of tombs outside the stone palace. Do you know that the weakest people in those tombs were above the half-venerable level when they were alive? Back then, almost all the strong people in the 5 regions were killed in order to seal this demon. In the end, we had to borrow the power of the dragon burial ground to barely seal this demon, the old man said seriously. What does that have to do with me? Knowing Destiny said lightly. This demon is murderous. Once he breaks out of the seal, he will definitely bring disaster to the human world again. At that time, no one in the human world can stop him. Young man, Xian Luo's promise can't be trusted. Please think twice, the old man said seriously. I don't care about the rise and fall of the human world, and I have no conflict of interest with this demon. On the contrary, the forbidden seal of the underworld 100 miles away should be set up by you. Speaking of which, you and I have a real grudge, the demonic body said coldly. I did set up the forbidden seal of the underworld. In order to prevent people from entering the stone palace to save this demon, I had to do this. I'm sorry. The old man sighed softly and said. Let's not talk about this for now. I just want to ask if you can bring someone back to life with the power you had when you were alive, Knowing Destiny said seriously. Impossible. The old man shook his head and said. Chapter 505. Hearing this, Ji Ming didn't say anything else. He turned around and looked at Xian Luo's upper body. He flipped his palm and formed a seal. No. The old man couldn't stop it in time. With a loud bang, the talismans on Xian Luo's body shattered one by one, turning into starlight and disappearing. Heaven's will. With a heavy sigh, the old man's soul power had also reached its limit. Specks of light began to scatter, and it seemed like he was about to vanish into thin air. At this moment, the cry of a phoenix rang out, and Red Robe appeared. His sword pointed to the source, and he barely managed to stop the dissipating soul of the old man. One body dual transformation technique. The old man's body slowed down as he looked at the red-clothed young man in front of him. Senior, is there an immortal in the demonic we'll see? Ning Chen asked anxiously. The immortal palace has existed since ancient times. However, whether or not there are immortals, I do not know. The elder wearily said. Is there a way to enter? Ning Chen asked anxiously as Ning Chen's soul grew weaker and weaker. Immortal palaces' whereabouts are indistinct and difficult to find. If it is fated or not, everything will be up to fate. You cannot force it. Youngster, you must remember that you absolutely cannot let Xian Luo appear. Otherwise, the 5 regions will be finished. As he spoke, the old man's figure completely dissipated. He turned into specks of light and disappeared from the world. In front of the petrified mystical demon, the seals shattered one by one. The aura around the killer's body surged as he unleashed all of his martial arts. Demon body, just what are you thinking? Asked Ning Chen. Save the ghost girl, said the demon body coldly. You trust him? Ning Chen narrowed his eyes and asked. I am also a demon. Do you think I will trust a demon? Demons are the most untrustworthy race in the world. If we save him, the first ones to die will be us. The demon sneered. He slammed his palm into the petrified half of the body, shattering another portion of the seal. Then what do you want to do? Ning Chen frowned and asked. The immortal palace is hard to find. Rather than placing your hopes on the illusory immortals, why don't you try using your own strength? Xian Luo is a superior supreme. Regardless of whether his words are true or false, once I merge with his power, I will be able to verify them, said the devil coldly. Ning Chen was silent. If the demonic body really merged with Xian Luo's power, it meant that Ning Chen would no longer be able to keep him in check. Once the demonic body became evil, Ning Chen would be completely powerless. How about it? Are you going to help me or stop me? That's your choice. The devil body didn't say anything else. Palm after palm landed on Xian Luo's petrified body, breaking the seal. The light in Ning Chen's eyes kept flickering, but he didn't step forward to stop him. With a ping sound, the final palm descended. The stone skin on the giant demon's upper body began to crack apart bit by bit. Overflowing demonic energy erupted. It was as heavy as an ocean, making one feel fear. The demonic body's expression turned serious, and the 1 million slaughter karma around him was released. They drowned the ocean and continuously devoured Xian Luo's power. How dare you! Below the stone palace, an angry roar rang out. Xian Luo, who was sealed, sensed that something was wrong and was furious. You didn't keep your word. Xian Luo roared. When did I say that I would definitely release you? The demon replied coldly as it devoured the former's energy. Don't you want to resurrect the person you mentioned? Xian Luo made a final struggle and said angrily. Demons will never be a race that keeps its promises. I am also a demon. Do you think I will believe your promises? Even if you really do have that ability, once I devour your energy, I can still revive her, said the devil. Very good. Xian Luo roared, Brat, remember what you did today. I originally wanted to let you live for a few more days, but you didn't know the difference between life and death. Once I leave this place, I will definitely turn your bones to dust. You will never be able to reincarnate. We'll talk about that when you come out, snorted the demonic body. Within the stone palace, more and more cracks appeared on the petrified giant demon's body. However, not a single strand of demonic energy leaked out. It was completely devoured by the slaughter karma. Ugh! Suddenly, a muffled groan rang out. The demonic body was unable to endure the excessive amount of demonic energy entering its body, and it staggered. Ning Chen took a step forward and poured his phoenix origin into the demonic body. At the same time, his left hand flipped through a series of complicated seals, sending them into the demonic body. Yellow Spring Seal! Cried the demonic body when it sensed the seal within its body. The Yellow Springs seal I control isn't complete, so I can't help you much. These seals can only help you temporarily seal the excessive demonic energy within your body. Whether or not you can fuse with this energy before the seals break will depend on your luck, said Ning Chen gravely. Many thanks, said the demonic body. Words of thanks are useless between you and me. As long as I can save the ghost girl, I have to try anything, said Ning Chen. Even if I can destroy the human world after obtaining this energy, snorted the demonic body. If such a day really comes, then you and I will bear all the sins together, said Ning Chen slowly. Finally, for once, I appreciate you, said the demonic body indifferently. Let's stop talking and focus on fusing with this energy, said Ning Chen. His left hand flipped faster and faster, sending streams of light into the demonic body. The Yellow Spring's divine seal forcefully sealed away the excessive demonic energy. The demonic energy was endless. Day after day passed, and the demonic body worked together to slowly refine the otherworldly demon's energy. No matter how furious the demonic body roared, it didn't waver in the slightest. Foolish humans, you can't save her. No one can save her. You want to reverse life and death. Dream on. Xian Luo's unwilling roars echoed in the stone palace for several days. The demonic body acted as if they couldn't hear him. They continued to devour the demonic energy within the crack. With the killing karma as a guide and the divine seal as a tool, the demonic body was sealed. After 10 days and nights, half of Xian Luo's energy was finally sealed away. Exhausted, the demonic body coughed up a mouthful of blood and staggered. Ha! The demonic body stabilized itself. Yuan energy gathered in its palms and poured into the phoenix body, helping it suppress its injuries. The path of the world was difficult, and people's hearts were unfathomable. The demonic body that had been forced into a dead end could only support each other and force its way forward. I need to borrow the talismans here to help suppress the demonic energy within my body. I might not be able to leave for a long time. I'll leave the matter of finding Immortal Palace to you, said the demonic body after a few minutes. Yes. Be careful of Xian Luo, reminded Ning Chen. No seal could resist the corrosion of time. He could clearly sense that the talismans within the stone palace were weakening with each passing day. The demonic body nodded and didn't say anything else. It sat down and focused on fusing with the demonic energy within its body. Ning Chen glanced at the stone palace one last time before turning around and walking out. The demonic body had already been delayed for a long time. The phoenix body left on its own, once more stepping onto the path of immortality. In this life, it wasn't to become an immortal, nor was it to live forever. It only hoped to see her return from reincarnation. The demonic will see was an eternally dusky world. The demonic body's foreign body and demonic energy mutually consumed each other. The closer one was to the stone palace, the safer it was. However, for the sake of finding Immortal Palace, Ning Chen left the stone palace's surroundings in the end. An afterimage flashed by in the dusky darkness, so fast that it was difficult to see it clearly. He didn't know if it was fated or not, but he knew that if he didn't do his best, he would never be able to see Immortal Palace. The most fortunate thing in the world was that hard work would be rewarded. There weren't many things like this, so how could he not cherish it? In the depths of the demonic will see, the phoenix appeared and the red-clothed walked out. Affected by the foreign energy of the Forbidden Land, the demonic body's phoenix origin had been greatly exhausted. It was difficult to even move through the dragon burial land. Looking around, it was a boundlessly dusky, silent, and ice-cold world. Not a single trace of life could be seen. Ding! Suddenly, a wave of strange immortal music sounded. Flower petals drifted through the air. 7 colors lingered about, releasing faint divine light. In the next moment, a golden immortal palanquin appeared. Exceptionally terrifying fluctuations spread from within. Wherever it passed, the void would collapse. It was mysterious and terrifying, as if it came from the ancient past and headed towards the unknown distance. There were large amounts of mysterious symbols engraved on the immortal palanquin. 3 dragon corpses opened the path, their flesh as condensed as iron. Black light flickered about, long becoming immortal. They headed south, accompanied by Tao cries. Multicolored lights scattered down, immortal music faintly discernible. It was as if an immortal was moving. However, the inside of the palanquin was invisible to the naked eye. Even with the heavenly eyes opened, they still couldn't see through it. Immortal Corpse Patrol. Ning Chen's expression changed. He quickly snapped back to reality and hurriedly chased after it. It was rumored that outside Immortal Palace, there were immortal corpses patrolling on the palanquin. 3 dragons opened the path, resonating with the heavenly Tao. They were extremely powerful and almost undefeatable. Even the supreme beings of this world had to avoid them. Right at this moment, in front of the Immortal Corpse Patrol, ghostly energy curled about. Yin winds whistled past, and groups of Yin soldiers passed by. At the front were 2 headless Yin riders holding battle spears. Their auras were extremely terrifying, already infinitely close to the supreme beings of this world. The Immortal Corpse Patrol was close to a legend that no one in this world could prove. The Yin soldiers passing by were also extremely strange. There were Yin riders that were close to supreme beings opening the path. Now that the 2 met, Ning Chen's footsteps paused, immediately moving out of the way, unwilling to approach. A moment later, a shocking scene occurred. The immortal palanquin headed south, not stopping at all. A dragon corpse leapt out, sweeping past with its flesh. A large expanse of dusky space collapsed. In just the blink of an eye, the 2 Yin riders vanished like smoke into thin air, unable to retaliate at all. Behind them, the 3,000 Yin soldiers similarly didn't escape the misfortune of dispersing. The dragon corpse spat out a breath in heavenly might, instantly turning them into ashes. The ones blocking the way disappeared. The dragon corpse returned to the front of the palanquin, silently opening the path and continuing into the distance. Ning Chen suppressed the shock in his heart, cautiously following behind, heading south together. The immortal music was pleasing to the ear, cleansing one's heart. Wherever the divine light from the palanquin fell, the strange power of the dragon burial was suppressed, unable to erode it at all. In the boundless darkness, the palanquin was in front, and knowing destiny was behind. They traveled for an unknown number of miles, seemingly without end, as if they would go on forever. The strange power of the dragon corpse was getting heavier and heavier. Ning Chen didn't dare to get too close. However, the strange power was difficult to resist, and his phoenix vitality was being consumed faster and faster, gradually drying up. The substitute talisman could only be used once. Rather than wasting it to death, it would be better to use it here. Ning Chen's eyes darkened. He gritted his teeth and decided to take a gamble. He took a step forward, and a red light flashed. In an instant, he arrived beside the palanquin. Just as he was about to get closer, he felt a huge force and was immediately sent flying. Puff! A pool of blood spilled into the dust. Ning Chen staggered 2 steps and stabilized himself. Looking at the palanquin in front of him, he stamped his foot and continued to chase after it. He wouldn't die. That's enough. The next moment, the red clothes flashed past. Resisting the repulsive force from the palanquin, he firmly held on to the iron chain between the dragon corpse and the palanquin. Like flying a kite, he followed the immortal corpse into the distance. Chapter 506. In the depths of the demonic will ocean, the immortal corpse was cruising towards the south. On the palanquin, 5-colored light shone down, suppressing the strange power that was rising from the danger zone. Behind the 3 dragon corpses, the iron chain swayed, and the red clothes fluttered. No one knew how long they had been traveling. 10 miles, 100 miles, or 1,000 miles, Ning Chen could no longer calculate. But he knew that the demonic will had an end. They had been traveling towards the south, so logically speaking, they should have left the demonic will ocean. However, that was not the case. The immortal corpse was still cruising in the darkness, as if it would never reach the end. Just as Ning Chen suspected that the palanquin would continue traveling forever, a broken stone door appeared in the darkness ahead. It was simple and majestic, but it was missing a lot. Dragon Gate. Seeing the stone door, Ning Chen frowned slightly and said. When a mortal cultivator reached the human sovereign realm, they could summon a Dragon Gate. It was said that after crossing the Dragon Gate, one would become a true immortal. He never thought that he would see a similar stone door here. The palanquin approached. Suddenly, Ning Chen's expression changed again. He saw the three ancient characters on the stone door, and he could not hide the shock in his heart. Southern Heaven Gate. The three large characters carved in ancient seal script contained the aura of countless years. Even from afar, one could feel the pressure of the vicissitudes of time. Ning Chen's expression became more and more serious. Could there really be immortals in the human world? After cruising through the Southern Heaven Gate, the palanquin did not stop and continued forward. As soon as it entered the Southern Heaven Gate, the strange power of the dragon burial suddenly disappeared. Without the restrictive power, the palanquin's repulsive force suddenly increased. Immediately, the palanquin was sent flying again. Ning Chen staggered a few steps and stopped himself. He wanted to chase after it again, but he saw the space in front of him swirling. The palanquin entered and disappeared. Ning Chen focused and turned into a ray of light, rushing into it quickly. The space changed, and the scene suddenly changed. It was a desolate and silent world. The night was cold, and the sky was filled with stars, shining with eternal brilliance. The palanquin had already disappeared. Ning Chen stood still and looked at this unfamiliar world. He gradually became confused. Was this place still the demonic will ocean, or was it a strange realm like the Four Extremities? Cold winds blew in all directions. It was a completely different world, vast and boundless. It was impossible to tell whether it was real or not. Ning Chen stopped in his tracks. The cries of the phoenix resounded in the air as a gigantic shadow of a phoenix appeared behind him. His red robes dissipated as he merged with the shadow of the phoenix. In an instant, the phoenix appeared, spreading its wings and soaring into the 9 heavens. The height of the 9 heavens was more than 10,000 zhang. When the phoenix entered the heavens, it could see the peak of the heavens. However, the sky was boundless. The higher they went, the stronger the shackles of heaven and earth became. The phoenix's wings were as heavy as 10,000 caddies, making it harder and harder to fly. Red robes walked out from the phoenix manifestation realm and looked up into the sky. With a wave of her hand, the king of hell appeared and slashed out with her sword, causing sword light to shoot up into the sky. The sword broke through the wind and clouds, surging outwards. The boundless world finally appeared at the peak of the heavens. With a thunderous boom, heaven and earth trembled. The sword light shattered, dissipating into nothingness. As expected, a strange look flashed in Ning Chen's eyes. It really was an illusory world like the Four Extremities. The unsolved mystery of the past reappeared today. Ning Chen once again returned to the earth. He was even more puzzled. The first time it happened, it could be explained as a miracle. Now that it happened again, it was inconceivable. Humans could not create things out of thin air. Even those as strong as the supremes of the human realm could not open up a world that was similar to the real world. This was the domain of the gods. Regardless of the ancient times, perhaps only the master of 7 absolutes heaven could have this ability. The king of hell was born as a god, not cultivated by humans. This was clearly recorded in the Book of Enlightenment. If there were miracles in the world, then the king of hell was the most inconceivable existence. The only explanation that made sense was that there really were immortals in the human world. At least, there were immortals in the past. Thinking of this, Ning Chen forcefully suppressed the emotions in his heart. His footsteps trembled as he quickly left. No matter what the truth was, since the immortal corpse patrolled here, it meant that this world was unusual. Perhaps, the truth would be revealed soon. The boundless world was extremely dilapidated. Turbulence could be seen everywhere. It was like the realm of a great world. The territory was extremely vast. After walking for several hours, he still couldn't see the end. All of a sudden, a finger swiped across the air, soundless and deadly. Sensing danger, Ning Chen's heart trembled. He subconsciously dodged, but with a ripping sound, the clothes on his shoulder were torn and several strands of hair fell to the ground. Clang! A finger light slashed again. The eyes that flashed past were cold and ruthless, revealing murderous intent. Ning Chen waved his sword. Although his body moved with the sword, the King of Hell met the finger attack. With a clang, the woman in front of him was pushed away. A feminine face, strange clothes, never seen before. His aura was as strong as a furnace. Obviously, he wasn't one of those grand elders who were nearing the end of their lifespans. Insiders, die. The woman's body moved again. Her strange body movement was unpredictable. Her finger attack was like a poisonous snake spitting out its tongue. It was impossible to guard against. Even someone as strong as knowing destiny state was restrained. What a strange martial art. In the fierce attack, Ning Chen frowned. He stepped on flowing light and his body was like an illusion, avoiding wave after wave of attacks. Remnant wind passing shadow. The finger and the sword collided. The two retreated at the same time. Seeing an opening, Ning Chen used his sword and stepped forward. His body turned into thousands of pieces. After a moment, they condensed into one. The King of Hell took his life. Ugh! The sword pierced through the woman's body. She took a few steps back. Blood spilled everywhere and dyed the ground red. The woman held the sword with her left hand and used her other hand to form a palm. Ning Chen's left hand formed a sword with 2 fingers. The sword finger broke the palm power. Blood spilled and the sand was dyed red. Who are you? How did you get in here? Ning Chen said coldly as he reached out and grabbed the woman's fair neck. Shameless insiders, go to hell with me. The woman's eyes showed a trace of madness. The true qi around her became chaotic and rushed into her qi sea. In the next moment, an earth-shattering explosion sounded. The ground within 10 miles collapsed and sank a few feet. In the sand, Hong Yi appeared outside of the explosion. Looking at the huge crater in front of her, she frowned. She really is crazy. From her words, she shouldn't be from the 5 regions. Could she be from sky beyond heaven like Xian Luo? More and more questions flashed through Ning Chen's eyes. As a person who had lived 2 lives, he knew very well that the 5 regions weren't the only world. Now it seemed that there were cultivators in sky beyond heaven too. For the demonic will see to hide such a secret was truly shocking. For thousands of years, there had been no rumors of sky beyond heaven in the 5 regions. This meant that there was no direct connection between the 5 regions and this realm. However, Xian Luo and the woman who had just appeared in the stone palace both meant that the 2 realms weren't completely separated. He didn't know why that woman hated the insiders so much, but this was definitely not a good thing. What he cared about the most was where this place was. It was located behind the southern heaven's gate. Could it be the former celestial realm? If that was the case, why was it so broken? Where was the celestial? Layers of fog covered the truth, making it impossible to see clearly. Ning Chen cautiously walked across the vast land, looking for traces of the celestial. Several days passed. The sun rose and set. There was no sign of life in this vast and desolate land. On the 11th day, when the cold moon rose, the phoenix body that had traveled tens of thousands of miles suddenly stopped. It looked at the constantly moving void with a serious expression. At the moment of crisis, it quickly retreated. A huge ancient war chariot appeared. Black light scattered and space shattered. On the war chariot, a young man in 5-colored divine clothes stood quietly. He had a dignified appearance and an extraordinary temperament. Peak half venerable. Ning Chen focused. What a powerful young man. He had almost entered the supremacy realm. Someone from the insiders. My luck is really good. The young man's mouth curved slightly. He patted the war chariot. Divine light rose and a divine sword with green lightning appeared. The moment the sword appeared, heaven and earth sank and the void within 100 miles shook violently. Ning Chen's expression turned cold. Was there really no end to this? Even a person made of clay had some anger, let alone Ning Chen, who was never easy to talk to. He clenched his hand and the king of hell descended. Purple light rose and shone in the night sky. Oh. This sword is not bad. I'll take it. The young man smiled faintly. His figure flashed and he slashed with green lightning. With a bang, the tips of the swords collided. Lightning and sword energy spread out in all directions. Powerful shockwaves rippled out and raised thousands of feet of sand. The cold moon shone high up in the sky. Under the moonlight, the two swords clashed loudly. Ji Rushue's eyes shone with a strange light. Green lightning surged on his sword. An incomparably swift and fierce attack appeared for the first time. On the other hand, although the Knowing Destiny State Cultivator's foundation was not as good, with a sword in hand, no one in the world could do anything to him. The sword on the sword was at the peak. It forcefully closed the gap between the two of them. Not bad. Seeing that the opponent's strength was extraordinary, Ji Rushue turned the sword in his hand. The true yuan in his body was activated. Green lightning soared into the sky. Immediately, the broken heaven and earth could not withstand the might of the sword and began to collapse. Seeing this, Ning Chen's body moved. In an instant, a demonic blade appeared. The blade and sword separated and broke through the gap between Ji Rushue's attack. With a bang, the swords collided. Sand danced wildly. The demonic blade took the life of Ji Rushue and the palm met the blade light. Fighting in close quarters made the crisis even more obvious. The blade and sword clashed with the green lightning. The two geniuses both displayed their peak strength. The rumbling shook the heaven and earth. The void kept collapsing. The two dodged, but the blade light arrived again. It was so fast that it was too fast for the eyes to follow. The battle reached an incandescent state. It was hard to determine the victor. The swords clashed again. The palm energy shook the blade light. Blood dripped down the blade. Ji Rushue frowned. Looking at his injured left hand, he shook his true yuan and stopped the battle. You, name. Shouldn't you tell me where you come from before asking for someone else's name? Ning Chen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said coldly. It was really troublesome to have a weak foundation. Spirit void, Ji Rushue. Oh. Ning Chen did not have any impression of this name. He casually nodded and replied, Inner world, white jade capital. Ji Rushue narrowed his eyes and said, I'll remember it. Let's stop here today. I look forward to the moment of life and death again. Although he did not use his full strength in the battle just now, the young man in front of him had also held back. The outcome of this battle was hard to predict. If they continued to fight, both of them would be injured. In this ancient immortal domain where danger lurked everywhere, it was not fun to be seriously injured. Anytime. Ning Chen also had concerns in his heart. He replied and left with his sword and blade. Looking at Ning Chen's departing figure, a dazzling light flashed in Ji Rushue's eyes. He stepped on the ground and returned to the war chariot, heading west. There was actually such a talented sword genius in the inner world. This trip was not in vain. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.